This is season 3 of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. The story progresses after Rimuru defeated Clayman and was acknowledged as a demon lord. He mentions that after the meeting concluded, Leon and Valentine left, and they were treated to a meal by Guy. Rimuru then tastes one of the dishes, finding it exquisite. He asks Raphael to analyze the recipe. Observing Milim eating without manners, Rimuru feels reassured that he doesn't need to worry about them. He notices Milim attempting to drink liquor and tries to stop her. However, Milim explains that this is her reward for pretending to be controlled. Dagrul remarks that Milim could have ended the act sooner, as Clayman never mentioned the mastermind. Milim responds that she couldn't miss the rare opportunity to fight Rimuru. Rimuru comments that it's too early for her to drink, but Milim persists in trying to take the alcohol from him. Kai wonders if the brandy was made with grapes from Eurasania, and Rimuru confirms it. He thinks they can produce more now that they have a stable fruit supply, and Dagrul notes that Valentine is missing out on a good drink. Rimuru realizes he has many questions for her. Raphael finishes analyzing the recipes, and Volpurgis comes to an end. Rimuru returns to Tempest, where everyone welcomes him with bows. Diablo congratulates him on joining Octagram. Rimuru wonders why he's there, and Rigard suggests they continue talks later as Rimuru must be tired. The scene shifts to Rimuru enjoying tea with Diablo, Shin, and Veldora. A goblin brings pudding for them. Diablo gives his share to Veldora, mentioning it's the first of their promises. Rimuru wonders why Diablo isn't eating his ship, and Diablo explains that he promised it to Veldora in exchange for information. Rimuru realizes that Diablo knows about what happened in Volpurgis because Veldora informed him and wonders what Diablo traded the information for. He finds out it was for 3 puddings and notes that Veldora doesn't need to eat to sustain himself. Veldora agrees that he doesn't need to eat but still enjoys it. He mentions that Rimuru also doesn't have a need to eat. Diablo asks Shin if she fulfilled her role as Rimuru's bodyguard, and Shin confirms she did. She wonders about Diablo's mission, and Diablo mentions it's going well. Rimuru is surprised at Diablo's timely return, and Diablo explains he was attending to some business when Veldora asked him to come back. Veldora attempts to leave, but Rimuru stops him, reminding him not to interfere with others' work. Rimuru takes away Veldora's pudding and instructs the goblin named Haruna not to give Veldora snacks in the future. He then asks Diablo if it's okay for him to stay and inquires about Falmouth's situation. Diablo explains he has insiders managing things in Falmouth and has restored all the prisoners of war to their original condition. Rimuru realizes Diablo is referring to the prisoners tortured by Shin and mentions leaving them as they was inconvenient. The story then shifts back to when Diablo was heading to Falmouth. He tries to heal the 3 prisoners, but healing magic has no effect on them. Diablo wonders what Shin did to them and proceeds to heal one of them using magic, hearing their screams. Iham and the others hope the prisoners will be okay by the time they reach Falmouth. Diablo restores Father Rahim to his original state, and the father thanks him. He then tries to heal Raisin, but Raisin asks him to attend to his king first. Diablo warns that favors will come at a cost, but heals Raisin nonetheless. Raisin hopes Diablo will allow him to serve as his lowest servant, offering his body and soul for Diablo's use and asking for mercy for King Admaris. Diablo agrees to the terms but emphasizes that he won't tolerate any disrespect towards his lord, Rimuru. He warns that even a hint of disrespect towards Rimuru could lead to dire consequence, possibly endangering the very existence of Falmouth. Raisin and Rahim agree to Diablo's conditions, pledging their loyalty to him. Raisin reflects on his torture and expresses disbelief at the betrayal of the royal sorcerer who served Falmouth for generations. He acknowledges Raisin's decision and promises Diablo his full support as Falmouth's final king. Diablo instructs them to follow his orders, assuring them that they won't suffer under his command. He relies on his unique skill, Tempter, to prevent any betrayal. Guillaume asks about the hostages, and Diablo assures him they are fine, adding that they will soon arrive in Falmouth. He resolves to swiftly execute the national takeover upon their arrival. As they enter Falmouth, the scene shifts to the minister and court, who are shocked by the disfigured king. They express frustration at their inability to restore the king's normal appearance. They inquire about the situation, and Raisin clarifies that he is not Shogo. He introduces himself and explains that he worked with the champions and returned with the king. The ministers are uncertain if this means that Falmouth's forces were defeated, and they have numerous questions. One of them calls for everyone to calm down and listen to what Raisin has to say first. Raisin explains that their battle awakened the slumbering dragon in the Jura forest, causing everyone to vanish at the time of its rebirth. The ministers are puzzled as the Western Holy Church had declared the dragon dead. Raisin clarifies that while the dragon was indeed slain, true dragons cannot be permanently killed, they are reborn elsewhere. It was unexpected that the dragon's rebirth occurred so nearby, and swiftly. The knights and soldiers fighting on the land disappeared after Veldora's resurrection, leaving only them behind. The ministers find this difficult to believe as it, and the champions enter the throne room. One of the ministers questions why commoners like them are entering the throne room. Raisin asks Minister Carlos to calm down, explaining that this group saved them. The ministers struggle to comprehend the situation. Reinheim elaborates that it was a fierce battle where both sides clashed, with their outnumbering the monster. But the monsters had the geographical advantage, resulting in significant casualties. The chaos of the battle led to Veldora's resurrection, and facing the dragon, all they could do was offer their final prayers. Raisin explains that Rimuru, the master of monsters, stood up against the dragon and persuaded it to calm down. The ministers find this difficult to believe, but Raisin points out that Rimuru had the support of the dragons and collaborated with them to negotiate with Veldora. The ministers are astounded that Rimuru also has the dragons on his side, realizing that provoking him was a serious mistake if he possesses the ability to negotiate with the dragon. Yom assures them that they needn't worry because he aided Rimuru in defeating the Orc Lord, and Rimuru is actually a benevolent individual who wishes to coexist peacefully with humans. Carlos suggests that Yom should act as their representative and convey their demands to Rimuru, deciding to inform him of their demands at a later time. Yom argues that this won't work because Rimuru, despite being open-hearted, is currently furious due to their declaration of war against his nation and the loss of his comrades. Carlos angrily questions if Yom is on Rimuru's side, and Diablo, angered by his disrespect toward his master, intervenes. This startles Raisin, who urges Carlos to remain calm, but Carlos disregards his advice and asserts that a commoner like Yom has no right to speak on matters concerning the kingdom. Diablo becomes even more furious, and Raisin uses a spell to immobilize Carlos, instructing him not to speak until he comprehends the situation. He then confirms to the ministers that Yom is speaking the truth, stating that they have lost the war. King Admaris was affected by the storm dragon's magic, and they witness his condition firsthand. Having been held captive and released thanks to Yom's word as a champion, the ministers contemplate yielding to a nation of monsters, recognizing their disadvantage with the storm dragon on their side. One of them suggests accepting the offer. Diablo approves of this decision, promising to release their king as agreed. The soldiers become wary of him standing so close to the king and question his identity. Diablo introduces himself as Rimuru's butler and uses a potion to heal King Admaris. He then delivers a message from Rimuru, outlining the terms of peace talks scheduled for a week later. Rimuru offers 3 options. The king abdicates and pays reparations, they become a vassal state, or they continue the war. The ministers express concern about the short time frame for a decision, but Diablo dismisses their objections, emphasizing that Rimuru's concerns outweigh theirs. Diablo warns them not to resort to any tricks and gives them a week to respond, stating that failure to reply will be interpreted as a desire to continue the war. With that, he exits the throne room. The story returns to the present, with Diablo explaining how he applied pressure on everyone, leaving Rimuru astonished that Diablo revealed such a strategy. Diablo explains that instilling fear was the most effective approach, and Rimuru is curious about the terms proposed for the peace treaty. Diablo reveals that he requested 10,000 stellas in reparations, equivalent to 1 trillion yen. Rimuru finds this demand excessive, but Diablo assures him not to be concerned. He clarifies that Falmouth has only one viable option: abdication and payment of reparations, possibly with negotiations to reduce the amount. Diablo indicates that they will likely comply with lowering the price and shift the burden of payment onto a third party. Rimuru wonders about their next steps, and Diablo reassures him, saying he has everything planned. He assures that they'll be able to reclaim at least 1,000 stellas. Rimuru inquires about the plan afterward, and Diablo explains that once they choose the abdication option, King Admaris will take the fall for the crisis. Rimuru realizes that he's the third party Diablo mentioned earlier. Diablo predicts that without the royal guard, the king won't be able to oppose the nobles and will have to fulfill their demands, albeit superficially. Rimuru understands that without military support, the king's faction will lose to the nobles' faction, suggesting that absorbing Ihim's faction is the best strategy to maintain cooperation. In this scenario, Admaris would ally with Ihim and others. Rimuru suggests lending some forces to Yom, and Diablo anticipates that Raisin will contact him soon. Rimuru questions if this strategy will ensure victory, and Diablo assures him that the next king won't be able to form alliances with neighboring nations. He explains that Fuse and Gazelle are already leveraging their influence to pressure Falmouth's neighbors, but he's prepared to handle any opposition personally. Diablo urges Rimuru not to worry and agrees to leave everything to him. We then see that the demon lord Kazarin, Yuki, and the clowns are sad upon learning about Clayman's death. Kazarim confirms the news, stating that she can no longer sense him. Tyr becomes emotional upon hearing this, while Yuki blames himself for underestimating the demon lords. Laplace acknowledges his own responsibility in the matter, admitting that he proposed the idea without foreseeing such consequences. Tyr expresses relief that Laplace returned unharmed, considering Demon Lord Valentine's strength comparable to their president's. She wonders about the circumstances of Valentine's defeat. Laplace attributes his victory to strategic timing, noting that they fought during the new moon, weakening the vampires. He modestly credits luck and contrasts himself with Clayman, whom he considers foolish. Footman reprimands Laplace for disrespecting Clayman, but Laplace continues to jest, prompting Footman to punch him. A confrontation ensues, halted by Kazarim's intervention. Yuki urges Laplace to drop the antagonistic act, while Footman comprehends Laplace's intentions and de-escalates the situation. The group convenes for a meeting, during which Yuki highlights the losses incurred, including the base, forces, treasure, and jewels given to Clayman. Tyr expresses confusion, believing the base should remain secure. Kazarim reveals that the base granted to Clayman was swiftly overtaken overnight by a small group of Magians sent by the slimes. They deduce that the slime used a diversion on the battlefield to seize the main base. Yuki emphasizes the need to reassess their strategy, advocating patience for their world-conquering aspirations. Kazarim agrees, cautioning against impulsive actions exacerbating their situation. Footman concurs with their assessment, but Yuki expresses frustration at being passive targets. He suggests retaliating against the slime for Clayman's demise, albeit in a limited capacity. Laplace recognizes Yuki's inclination for scheming, as Yuki proposes needling the slime. The scene shifts to the Holy Empire of Loblius, where Hinata describes a society founded on absolute equality under the demon lord Luminous Valentine, their god. Reflecting on her past encounter, Hinata acknowledges her defeat only to Luminous Valentine, contrasting it with her perceptions of Shizu's approach as too lenient. She resolves to rely solely on her own strength, finding a place where she can grow stronger. Hinata reveals that the Western Holy Church became her sanctuary, where she swiftly rose to become a paladin in her first year and eventually ascended to lead the Crusaders in her second year. With each step up the hierarchy, she uncovered deeper truths. She learned that the revered Holy Emperor Loblius was actually Louis, a vampire, and the twin brother of Demon Lord Roy Valentine. Armed with this knowledge, she confronted the brothers in a bid to liberate humanity from vampire dominion. Despite emerging victorious, she sustained severe injuries in the fierce battle. Contemplating her sacrifice, Hinata was visited by Luminous Valentine, who miraculously healed the vampires and spared Hinata's life. Luminous posed a profound question about justice, highlighting its inherent complexity and the limits of imposing one's will on others. Hinata was given a week to pass a rigorous trial, after which she would face Luminous Valentine in a decisive confrontation. Following Hinata's successful completion of the trial, she confronted Luminous and emerged victorious, pledging her allegiance to her. Hinata then reveals that Luminous and her kin do not sustain themselves by tearing people apart for their flesh. Rather, they require only a small amount of blood for sustenance. Higher-ranking vampires can even endure without blood indefinitely. Hinata explains that the quality of human blood improves with the happiness of the human race, and Luminous strictly prohibits excessive blood extraction. The nation maintains a high level of order and equality, even among Western nations, and to preserve this utopia, Hinata commits to protecting Luminous. Later, Hinata encounters Louis, who informs her of Roy's demise. Despite her disbelief, Louis insists on the truth, recounting how an intruder killed Roy upon his unexpected return from Valpurg. Hinata ponders whether Roy might have been an imposter demon lord, as he was as formidable as any genuine one. She struggles to reconcile the strength of the mysterious clown she encountered with that of a demon lord. Hinata reassures Louis, saying that everything should be fine as long as Lady Luminous remains unharmed. However, Louis disagrees, pointing out that Roy's demise, previously seen as a menace, might lead to a decline in people's faith in their belief. He also mentions that Veldora has been resurrected, but the stability of the Jura forest remains intact for now. Hinata attributes the forest's stability to her decision to let Rimuru escape, but Louis adds that the forces of the Falmouth Kingdom have also been wiped out. Reflecting on her actions, Hinata regrets not eliminating Rimuru when she had the chance, despite trapping him in her holy field. Louis questions if her leniency was due to Rimuru's claim of being from her world, but Hinata denies this, stating that Rimuru's objectives are at odds with Lady Luminous's goals. Hinata explains that she disregarded Rimuru's words and attempted to destroy his town to prevent any further interference. Louis suggests that Hinata's failure may have unintended benefits, as it could prompt Western nations to unite against the growing threat in the Jura forest. With Roy's demise, the monsters become a convenient common enemy for humanity to rally against in the upcoming Tema War. Hinata expresses doubts about whether things will go smoothly, suggesting that it would be ideal if the Jura forest remained stable and if monsters and humans could coexist peacefully. She brings up the Eastern merchant who provided her with information, mentioning their planned meeting from the previous night. However, she realized the merchant's ulterior motives, leading her to reconsider sparing Rimuru. Louis proposes using Tempest as a defense against the East until they are prepared, assuming Rimuru survived the Valpurgis Council. He anticipates Lady Luminous's return, noting that informing her of Roy's death will be distressing. Despite being siblings, he remarks on his lack of emotional attachment to Roy's passing, contrasting it with Lady Luminous's expected grief. Upon Lady Luminous's return, she dismisses Roy's actions as foolishness. Louis inquires about the events at Valpurgis, prompting her to reveal what occurred. Luminous provides them with all the details, expressing frustration that Veldora always obstructs her plan. She believes she could have revived Roy had he been nearby, prompting Hinata to apologize for her failure to capture the intruder. However, Luminous assures her that she merely followed orders and takes full responsibility for the situation. Louis attributes the blame to his brother's inability to meet Luminous's expectations, but she insists now is not the time for remorse. With the evil dragon's revival and the emergence of the demon lord Rimuru, they must strategize to confront both threats. Hinata offers to defeat Veldora on Luminous's behalf, but Luminous warns her of Veldora's immense power. She explains that Veldora is a natural force beyond conventional weapons or magic, capable of causing devastating shockwaves with his mere presence. Louis recalls how Night Rose Castle was reduced to rubble in the wake of Veldora's power. Hinata resolves to confront the dragon when necessary, but Luminous urges her to exercise restraint to avoid losing her. Hinata acknowledges this, reflecting on the mistake of labeling Rimuru as a monster and ignoring his words. She considers whether this was manipulated by the Eastern merchant, and ponders if they have their own informant. Seeking guidance, Hinata asks Luminous what to do about Rimuru. Luminous advises leaving him alone for the time being. However, Hinata expresses concern that the monster's expansion into cities and highways might attract the attention of the angels, potentially accelerating their invasion. Luminous warns against making enemies of Rimuru and Veldora, as it could make them the primary targets of the angels. Hinata suggests that their town's existence challenges the belief that monsters are humanity's common enemy in Luminism. Louis proposes enlisting Rimuru as an ally, perhaps as a sinister figure to serve their interests, as an evil demon lord. Luminous asserts that Rimuru's intentions of building a peaceful nation and protecting humans make it unlikely for him to become their enemy. She acknowledges that Louis's idea could have been viable if Rimuru hadn't already established contact with humans. However, their current course of action is to wait and observe. She suggests informing their followers of Veldora's return and capitalizing on Rimuru's openness to political exchange to manipulate the Western nation. Luminous seeks Hinata's approval for this plan, although Hinata expresses concern about Rimuru holding a grudge for her previous attempt on his life. Luminous reassures her, believing that Rimuru is rational enough not to antagonize them. The scene shifts to Falmouth, where Admaris proposes paying war reparations to Tempest amounting to 10,000 stellas. The nobles object to this, citing the immense financial burden it would impose. They discuss alternative strategy, including seeking support from the Western Church and the Lightspeed hero of Ingratia, Masayuki. Despite their reservations, they refuse to comply with the monster's demands. Admaris's brother encourages him not to give up easily, but Admaris insists that they are powerless against the Storm Dragon. He resigns himself to paying reparations and relinquishing the throne. A noble interrupts, revealing crucial documents from Blumund stating their allegiance with Tempest and criticizing Falmouth's failed campaign. While some dismiss Blumund's influence due to its size, they worry about Dworgen, a formidable armed nation, aligning with Tempest. Suddenly, a soldier arrives with news that Rimuru has declared himself a demon lord. The nobles speculate on the reactions of other demon lords, hoping they might eliminate Veldora along with Rimuru. Another soldier reports Rimuru's victory over demon lord Clayman, and the affiliations of Carrion and Frey with demon lord Milan. The 8 current demon lords have formed a group called the Octagram. The king then informs the nobles that both Veldora and Rimuru pose threats. He emphasizes their inability to contend with these monsters and announces his decision to abdicate in favor of his brother Edward, rather than nominating his son Edgar as the king. Admaris explains that Edgar is still too young to navigate the challenges ahead. The nobles agree, and Edgar silently welcomes the prospect of becoming the next king. Subsequently, Falmouth signs an armistice with the Jura Tempest Federation, ostensibly recognizing Tempest as a nation, though this agreement is merely superficial. The scene transitions to Shuna meeting Rimuru after returning from Clayman's castle, where Rimuru inquires about Hakuro's whereabouts. Shuna informs him that Hakuro remains at the castle, attending to some duties. Rimuru realizes that Shuna is having Hakuro handle her tasks. Benimaru then updates Rimuru that he's collaborating with Jelb to investigate Clayman's castle, distribute the spoils of war, and manage the prisoners. Concerned about his presence, Rimuru questions Benimaru if it's appropriate for him to be there since he's supposed to be the commander. Benimaru explains that with the war concluded, there's no need for Rimuru to remain. He mentions having delegated his command to his capable vice commander before departing, prompting Rimuru to reflect on both siblings' tendency to pass on responsibilities. As they gather to discuss further, Rimuru mentions hearing about Gabairu's return to the battlefield. Benimaru shares about his alliance with Father Mitter, one of Malum's followers, who is assisting in the aftermath of the battle. Rimuru acknowledges the immense effort war demands, especially in managing prisoners of war, expressing hope for their cooperation. Benimaru assures Rimuru that he has addressed the prisoners, easing Rimuru's concerns. Curious about the explanation given to the prisoners, Rimuru inquires about Gabiru's return. Benimaru reveals Gabiru will soon arrive with the 3 Biscuiteers, surprising Rimuru with their inclusion in the group. Benimaru reminds him that after Malum destroyed the capital of Urusane, they agreed to provide shelter to the displaced residents temporarily. Since they couldn't accommodate everyone, they opted to divide them. Those whose villages remained intact returned to their homes. Only those eager to acquire new skills will come to Tempest, while the lycanthropes and strong Magin will join Geld's team to revitalize Urusania's land. Reflecting on this, Rimuru recalls that Urusania is now under Malum's control, and during Valpert, he proposed relocating her capital there as they were rebuilding it from scratch. Malum approved the idea. Benimaru adds that some Magin prisoners will also accompany the lycanthropes, and he advises maintaining vigilance just in case. Hearing this, Rimuru feels pleased that his followers have become capable of making their own decisions, though he wonders if they no longer need him. A few days later, Diablo returns from Falmouth, presenting Rimuru with evidence of the peace treaty and 15 stellas as reparations. Rimuru acknowledges that the amount received exceeds their expectations, and Diablo informs him that most of it came from King Admaris's personal wealth. The royalists anticipated that, without the protection of the knights, the nobles would exploit them regardless, prompting Rimuru to speculate on the likelihood of an impending civil war. Diablo confirms the possibility, and reveals that the remaining portion of the funds is in the form of a loan, expressing skepticism about the king's commitment to the agreement. To preempt any potential betrayal, he orchestrated the king's brother's ascension to the throne instead of the prince. Raphael adds that the faction unwilling to pay the remaining reparations will likely shift the blame onto Admaris. Detailing further, Diablo explains that Admaris, after relinquishing the throne to become a viscount, will settle in a countryside village near Count Earl Niddle's domain, where him and others reside. In case of any trouble, they can seek assistance from Niddle's forces. Even if the new king attempts to isolate Admaris, Ihim would intervene, potentially sparking a civil conflict by exposing the new king's deceitfulness. Rimuru views this as an ideal strategy but cautions Diablo to remain vigilant. He emphasizes minimizing civilian harm and assures Diablo that additional funds from the Stellas are available if needed. Diablo assures him it won't be necessary, and requests permission to engage in combat, but Rimuru declines, opting instead to assign Diablo troops to work with and advise him to maintain a low profile, which Diablo agrees to. Recalling the Western Holy Church's attempt to contact Rahim and their interest in learning about the conflict with Falmouth, Rimuru deliberates on their response. He asserts the importance of not ignoring them, and Diablo suggests allowing Rahim to testify, a notion Rimuru agrees with, given the Church's desire for information, particularly with only 3 survivors from the battle. Rimuru notes the Church's monitoring of Veldora, making deceit unlikely, prompting Diablo to inquire about Rahim's testimony. Rimuru plans to encode a message into a crystal, and entrust Rahim with delivering it to observe the reaction of the Church. Datta arrives and informs Rimuru that the prisoners of war have arrived. Rimuru observes their entry into the city alongside the lycanthropes, and Albus and Sophia express gratitude for accepting them. Rimuru assures them it's no trouble and inquires about Phobio, learning that he's been tasked with overseeing the prisoners. Rimuru informs them that housing and employment arrangements have been made for the refugees and promises to provide further details later. With that settled, they depart. Gabiru returns, and Rimuru praises his performance in battle, though Gabiru feels he still has much to learn, having been bested by Father Mitter. Rimuru encourages him not to fret, emphasizing his potential for growth. Datta hands Rimuru a letter from Malin, revealing her intention to visit along with some of her followers to learn cooking from Rimuru. Rimuru questions if Gobta understands the significance, and Gobta explains that according to Hermie, the dragon faithful abstain from cooked food, suggesting Malam's followers lack culinary expertise. Rimuru comprehends Malam's intentions, while Zien questions why Malam doesn't directly request her followers to cook for her. Rimuru explains that Malam has her own unique way of understanding social dynamics. He suggests they treat Malam's followers with the respect they deserve, a sentiment Gabiru agrees with. A month passes since Valpurgis, and the city is bustling with activity. Gelb arrives looking weary, prompting Rimuru to inquire about his condition privately. Gelb explains his efforts in organizing the prisoners, dividing them into groups, and surveying the land for clearing. However, he encountered challenges. High orcs easily communicate telepathically, but this method isn't effective with lycanthropes or Magin. Additionally, some Magins resist authority, hindering productivity. Rimuru reflects on the complexities of managing and educating diverse groups. The situation reminds Rimuru of his time as an office worker. He suggests to Gelb that they go out for a drink later to unwind. The scene shifts to a bar, where Geld remarks on the challenge of ensuring everyone grows at the same pace. Trini suggests that it might seem faster if he handled everything himself, but doing so would deprive those under him of valuable experience. Geld expresses concern that at his current rate, he won't be able to assist Rimuru effectively. Rimuru reassures him, drawing parallels to his past life as an office worker. They spend the night drinking together. The next day, Rimuru accompanies Raimaru around town with Shi. Rigard informs him that merchants have started returning, as Fuse has assured them of safety. Rimuru is pleased by the news. Rigard adds that there hasn't been significant movement from other nations since Rimuru's coronation as Demon Lord. He mentions that the Emperor of the Sorceress Dynasty of Elion, Elmesha Elru, has officially recognized their relationship with Tempest. Rimuru realizes that Elmesha is eager for the construction of the highway. Rigard notes that their allies worldwide are diligently fulfilling their duties. Rimuru ponders over who was overseeing the highway survey, leading to a scene where he convenes a meeting with the ogres. Soi reports that he hasn't encountered any hostile monsters along the projected route, and the local populace readily agreed to their plans. Rimuru instructs him to conclude the survey before Geld becomes available again, but Soi raises a concern. He explains that the Kusha Mountains, bordering Tempest, are riddled with treacherous canyons and inhabited by the Tengu. Despite the locals' warnings, Soi emphasizes that the Tengu, though friendly, are a warrior race. Even Demon Lord Frey avoided direct confrontation with them. Soi suggests seeking Frey's counsel, and Rimuru agrees to approach the Tengu, though Benimaru volunteers to go instead. Rimuru consents, acknowledging that a Demon Lord's presence might unsettle them. Reflecting on the numerous challenges ahead, Rimuru resolves to convene a meeting with everyone soon. The scene transitions to Rimuru meeting Hikuro, who reports on Clayman's territory, the puppet nation of Daste. Hikuro explains that the land is inhabited solely by dark elves responsible for maintaining the castle grounds, showing willingness to follow orders. They revealed that Dastave was once an elven kingdom, supported by the ruins still present in the area. These elves consider themselves as caretakers of the graves. Rimuru speculates that Clayman likely gained wealth from items found in these ruins. Hakuro adds that ancient ruins are scattered worldwide and often targeted by treasure hunters, but only a few have been discovered. Rimuru instructs Hakuro to keep this information under wraps until he can inspect the ruins personally. Later, Rimuru gathers everyone for a meeting to announce his ascension to Demon Lord, which is met with joy. He shares plans to expand his rule over the entire Jura forest, anticipating no issues. Benimaru inquires if Rimuru's jurisdiction extends to the lands across the river, to which Rimuru affirms. He questions if there are any objections. Benimaru clarifies that while there are no issues, the territory beyond the river falls outside the Dryads' domain. The Dryads govern the lands they've cultivated, and the arrival of a new Demon Lord would complicate matters for those across the river. Kaijin finds this development intriguing, noting that the Demon Lords have acknowledged Rimuru's authority over the forest's resources. This implies that anyone seeking to settle in the forest must obtain Rimuru's consent. Gabiru mentions the numerous inhabitants already residing in the forest, prompting Rimuru to realize they will soon seek his approval. Shuna predicts those who fail to pay respects to Rimuru may face consequences, as being under a Demon Lord's protection carries significant weight. Rigard adds that a Demon Lord symbolizes power, citing the lizard men's eagerness to align with Rimuru. Gabiru confirms his father's intent to visit Rimuru following his ascension, having informed Shin beforehand. Rimuru questions Shin's failure to inform him, anticipating other tribes to follow suit. Deciding to capitalize on the influx of visitors, Rimuru plans to showcase their town as part of a grand campaign. He stresses the need for additional labor and proposes using the opportunity to expand their population. Rimuru suggests introducing visitors to their town's amenities, hoping some may choose to migrate. He emphasizes the importance of relaxation, proposing a festival to lift spirits and announce his public debut. Excitement spreads among the group, with Rimuru proposing the festival as an opportunity for his public introduction. Rimuru decides to postpone the discussion about the festival and inquires with Soi about any changes in their monster ecosystem. Soi reports that he dispatched his body doubles to patrol the area and found no major issues except for a sword grizzly causing trouble in the northwestern forest area, which he dealt with safely. Raphael informs Rimuru that a sword grizzly is a ranked monster similar to a night spider, posing a challenge even for seasoned adventurers. Datta expresses reluctance to deploy more troops in such circumstances. Soi reassures them that managing the situation won't be a problem and jokingly remarks that Datta spoils his troops too much. Datta emphasizes the need for vigilance around such dangerous monsters, prompting Soi to suggest additional training for their forces. Rimuru acknowledges the importance of training but raises concerns about the increasing number of emerging monsters. He fears potential casualties if they don't take action promptly. Vesta proposes the idea of erecting an anti-magic barrier along the highway to address this issue. Rimuru seeks clarification, and Kaijin explains that they have developed a prototype for a fully automatic magic generator capable of sustaining the barrier continuously. Rimuru questions whether the device operates similarly to rune magic. Vesta confirms the similarity, but highlights its superior performance and ability to function on a larger scale. Kaijin reveals they developed it to compensate for their previous inadequacy during the barrier crisis, leaving Rimuru amazed at their speedy progress in creating a functional model. Gobairu, Shuna, and Kurobai mention their contributions to the project, prompting Vesta to lead them outside to demonstrate the generator. He explains that Tempest, being a land of monsters, boasts a high concentration of magicules in the air, prompting him to devise a way to capitalize on it. The automatic generator utilizes ambient magicules to establish a magic barrier, but its capabilities extend beyond this. Kaijin adds that it includes a mechanism to accumulate magicules, which they can then use to decrease the density of magicules in the air. Rimuru expresses enthusiasm for this feature, but Vesta cautions him about its limitations. It requires a certain threshold of magicule density to function effectively, although this isn't a concern in their town. In summary, Rimuru concludes that the device extracts magicules from the air to maintain an automatic anti-magic barrier. Kaiji explains that while they can use the barrier until its internal magicule runs out, they designed it to refill its energy source. They incorporated a magi crystal for this purpose. Rimuru questions the efficiency of using a magi crystal, considering the potential waste. Raphael clarifies that converting a magi crystal into magic energy would result in a 90% loss of magicule. Kaiji reassures Rimuru that they addressed this inefficiency using rune magic, minimizing consumption to just 10% while ensuring that the wasted magicules can be regenerated and reused. He further elaborates that this process allows for perpetual motion, potentially leading to a decrease in the emergence of monsters and magic beasts due to reduced magicule density. Rimuru marvels at the invention's potential to mitigate the birth of powerful monsters. Vesta adds that the device can perform more than just casting an anti-magic barrier. Although there are limitations to the types of magic it can cast, they can modify its function by changing the magic board engraved with different magical formulas. Rimuru draws a parallel, likening the device's functionality to a record player, and he speculates that the idea might have originated from a story he shared previously. He envisions the potential for scalability and portability to address various situations. Vesta elaborates on the plan, outlining the installation of devices along highways at even intervals to activate anti-magic barriers. With sufficient magic density, there will be no need for charging or fuel replacement, only periodic checks to ensure barrier functionality. Impressed, Rimuru appoints Vesta as the project lead, which he accepts. Jelt offers Orc assistance due to the device's weight. Veldora expresses excitement about releasing his aura once the barrier is complete, but Rimuru cautions against it, as Veldora's aura could harm most people. Veldora admits to feeling drained from suppressing his aura, prompting Rimuru to advise him to manage it. Veldora questions why Rimuru doesn't experience similar issues, to which Rimuru explains that he stores his aura in his stomach, eliminating the urge to release it. Diablo elaborates that it's extremely challenging for beings like Veldora to fully suppress their aura, noting even Benimaru and his group emit some. Veldora possesses an immense amount of magicule, requiring considerable effort to contain. Rimuru inquires if this is accurate, and Veldora confirms, expressing his desire to release his aura somewhere. Rimuru ponders the potential consequences, fearing the creation of a hazardous zone and the birth of a powerful monster like a Charybdis. He advises Veldora to delay, promising to consider the matter. Veldora agrees, urging Rimuru to expedite the decision-making process. The meeting proceeds, with Rimuru presenting a construction plan to Geld for Malam's castle. He assigns the task to Geld but senses his uncertainty. Rimuru enlists Kaijin's assistance to support Geld in this endeavor. Kaijin agrees, suggesting they include Murd in the project for city planning, which Rimuru approves of, feeling confident with Kaijin's support. He reassures Geld, expressing belief in his capabilities and offering assistance if needed. Geld worries about the consequences of failure, but Rimuru assures him it will still be a valuable learning experience. Shifting focus, Rimuru asks Diablo about his progress. Diablo explains that he might face difficulties negotiating with royalty directly, so Admaris is teaching him etiquette. Rimuru sees potential in aligning with Admaris. Diablo reveals Edward's covert actions, estimating it will take several months for him to gather his forces. Rimuru acknowledges the need for preparation and the importance of time. Diablo reassures Rimuru, mentioning he's already instructed Benimaru to organize the deploying forces. Benimaru confirms he's ready 2 units, one for public operations and another for clandestine activities. Diablo then informs Rimuru about Rahim's absence, suspecting he's still on his mission to deliver the message. Rimuru considers if Rahim faced trouble on his way, but Diablo dismisses this, explaining Rahim was escorted directly to Ingratia's capital with a crystal ball. However, due to the city's barrier, Diablo's men couldn't infiltrate it. Rimuru questions Rahim's choice to go to Ingratia. Diablo clarifies that Ingratia houses a teleport gate to the Holy Empire of Loblius, where the church headquarters lie. Rahim used this gate to reach his destination. Rimuru expresses surprise at the lack of reports from Rahim and speculates about his fate. Diablo assures him his tempter skill would have sensed Rahim's demise, establishing control over his soul upon death. Rimuru acknowledges that Rahim's safety is paramount, emphasizing they lack sufficient information to fully understand the situation. Soy expresses concern about infiltrating Loblius, but Rimuru reassures him it's unnecessary, considering Hinata's presence there. Reflecting on his message to Rahim, Rimuru recalls urging for resolution and adding some provocations. He believes the best outcome would be peaceful coexistence, banking on Diablo's plans if the church remains passive. Xiu-Na informs Rimuru about recent attacks during his confrontation with Hinata, suspecting a connection between them. Speculating on a mastermind hinted by Clayman, Rimuru stresses the need to anticipate their next moves, noting Hinata might act if this figure is involved. Detecting inconsistencies, he ponders whether Hinata acted independently or under orders. Benimaru seeks clarification, prompting Rimuru to doubt Hinata's subservience and Kaijin to support this, citing only God Luminous as her potential commander. Shunna considers whether the timing was coincidental. Rimuru suggests that Hinata might be manipulated, leading Diablo to infer Rimuru doubts the mastermind's authority over her. They speculate on the implications, with Raphael suggesting multiple motives are at play, linking the events. It suggests these events aren't orchestrated by a single entity, as unifying everything under one mastermind seems unlikely. Rimuru finds this explanation plausible, realizing Falmouth and Clayman both had reasons to oppose him, aligning with Hinata's anti-monster stance. He believes these motives converged, leading to the events. He assumes the mastermind suffered losses, and is now rebuilding forces, likely avoiding direct confrontation. Raphael agrees, suggesting the mastermind's power may not exceed Clayman's. Rimuru concludes there's no immediate threat, but Raphael warns of other players in the background. Rimuru speculates events will continue regardless of Hinata's intentions. Diablo advises against assuming Hinata's decisions are sole, given various interests involved. Rimuru suggests multiple masterminds might exist, conflicting interests causing the current situation. They agree this theory is plausible, emphasizing the danger of acting on assumptions due to lack of information. Diablo pledges to investigate further, starting with the merchant who supplied Admaris intel. Rimuru notes war often involves money, suspecting merchants seek profit behind the scenes. He tasks Diablo with identifying Falmouth-affiliated merchants and Shunna with scrutinizing Clayman's castle records. Rimuru delegates festival preparations, reinforcement selection, and security arrangements to various individuals. He assigns Rigged festival preparations, Hikuro to assist Benimaru, Jelb to focus on his duties, Rigger to enhance town security, and Gabairu to aid Rigger. Unsure of Chin's task, Rimuru assigns Ranga and Chin as his bodyguards, believing this covers everything. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Loblius, Hinata holds a meeting with fellow knights. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Lelis, Hinata is attending a meeting with other knights. She apologizes for her tardiness, but Rook-S expresses disbelief at her lateness. He brings up her failure to prevent Veldora's resurrection. and the birth of a new demon lord, questioning how she can act as if nothing has happened. Paladin Renard comments on Seri's rudeness, while Paladin Arno offers to resolve any issues with their captain. There's tension as the Rooks wonder if the Paladins are looking for a fight. Hinata intervenes to prevent further conflict and suggests that Seri could take her place, pending a test. Paladin Rita's reports on the peaceful state of the forest of Jura, noting merchant activity in the area. Paladin Fritz expresses surprise at merchants doing business with a demon lord, but Paladin Guard emphasizes the greater concern of Veldora potentially going on a rampage. Hinata suggests hearing the full report before making judgments. Rita's mentions significant growth in the land of monsters, with well-maintained highways and manageable magic hill density. There are no signs of mystic beast emergence, indicating Rimuru, the demon lord, desires coexistence with humans. Hinata inquires about Veldora, and Rita explains that access to the sealed cave was prohibited, so she couldn't confirm his presence. Fritz suggests that the news of Veldora's revival might be false, but Hinata asserts the infallibility of divine messaging. She then listens to the rest of the meeting reports. Guard concludes his report by noting the apparent peace and ingration, but he warns that if their rival, Falmouth, collapses, they might exploit the situation to expand their influence. Seri presents his report on Falmouth, revealing that King Admaris has relinquished the throne to his brother Edward. While the power transition seems smooth on the surface, Edward is busy recruiting skilled mercenaries and new soldiers. The nobles are becoming restless, indicating a potential civil war. Seri couldn't confirm Rimuru's involvement, but found that Edward was reaching out to council leaders, guild executives, merchants, and his own men. Hinata realizes that Edward is bolstering his military and likely has no intention of paying war reparations. She believes that Rimuru, the demon lord, won't ignore this and is likely prepared for such developments. Seri ponders whether everything is unfolding as Rimuru planned, and Hinata confirms it, regretting not heeding Rimuru's advice earlier. She asks Seri if the eastern merchants contacted by Edward showed any suspicious behavior. Seri expresses more concern about Rimuru than the merchants, but Hinata insists on receiving the information. Seri turns to Glenda to inquire if there are any rumors about the eastern merchants in the commercial zone. Glenda reports no suspicious activities, but offers to investigate further if needed. Hinata agrees and emphasizes the importance of understanding their current situation. She notes that the resurrection of the Storm Dragon had less impact than expected, with casualties limited to the deployed Falmouth army. Seri expresses a desire to hear Archbishop Rehm's account of the battlefield events. Hinata informs them that she has already summoned the Archbishop. Arnaud mentions rumors of Rimuru negotiating with Veldora to pacify, which the others find believable given Veldora's recent low profile. Hinata confirms receiving a message from Lord Luminous regarding this. According to Hinata, Rimuru is commanding Veldora, and she has warned them not to interfere with him. She declares that they will not engage in a confrontation with Demon Lord Rimuru, which the Rooks oppose. Grigori finds it hard to accept that they should overlook Rimuru's actions in Falmouth. Seri acknowledges they shouldn't interfere with Demon Lords, but insists that as the 10 Great Saints, they are just as powerful. Renard adds that the involvement of the Storm Dragon complicates matters, and Grigori emphasizes they cannot allow a demon lord to act freely in human territory. Hinata asserts that their lord's directives are absolute, but they won't abandon Falmouth. She emphasizes protecting its people amidst the civil unrest. Grigori questions if they should tolerate Rimuru's actions, to which Hinata agrees, citing Rimuru's declaration of not wishing to antagonize humanity. She believes taking hostile action against him would be futile, and potentially make them his enemies. Thus, they must overlook his actions. Grigori blames Hinata for this decision, but she takes full responsibility, admitting she acted independently when she fought Rimuru. This surprises everyone, and Hinata urges them to remain calm. She explains she doubts Rimuru desires war, and recounts her own remorse for attacking him earlier. She reveals she was misled by Eastern merchants who claimed monsters were impersonating humans and accused Rimuru of killing her master. Recognizing the unwise choice to fight him again now that he's a demon lord, Renard suggests Rimuru may still view her as an enemy. Hinata explains her intention to have a conversation with Rimuru and, if necessary, offer an apology. Concerned, others warn her of potential danger, but she reassures them, emphasizing the need to understand Rimuru's perspective first. She doubts the situation will escalate as negatively as feared. Based on reports and her impression of Rimuru as an amiable individual, she believes dialogue may lead to mutual understanding. As Rahim and the 7 Days clergy join the discussion, Hinata expresses surprise at their presence. Seri acknowledges their legendary status as hero mentors, recalling Hinata's trial under them, during which she acquired their skills through her usurper ability. However, now they seem to disrupt her due to her appropriation of their powers. Annoyed by their interference, Hinata queries their purpose for being there. The 7 Days clergy clarify they're solely interested in Rahim's information about Rimuru. Rahim proceeds to detail the battlefield encounter with Rimuru, recounting the devastating light-based attack that decimated their forces. Recognizing Rimuru's power as a true demon lord, they reveal their involvement in his ascension and compare his abilities to those of the Night Gren, known for sunlight magic. They discuss strategies to counter Rimuru's attacks, noting the differences in force between Gren's ability and Rimuru's. Hinata considers the possibility that Rimuru's attack could be a form of integrated magic based on physics, possibly concentrating sunlight and redirecting it towards his enemies. She realizes that Rimuru might have utilized his scientific knowledge from another world, making it difficult for people in this world to comprehend the concept behind his technique. Rahim then reveals that the light-based attack wasn't the most terrifying aspect. After the attack, the battlefield fell completely silent, and suddenly, the surviving 20,000 men perished simultaneously, leaving only Raisin, King Admaris, and himself alive. This shocking revelation leaves everyone speechless, reminding Hinata of Lady Luminous's words. She realizes that these beings are beyond even Lady Luminous's control. Initially, Veldora and the 2 awakened demon lords, Gi and Mei, were the only ones on that list, but now they can assume that Rimuru has also awakened. Sarai suggests that Rimuru may have consumed a large number of souls to awaken himself, similar to the 2 demon lords in the legend. As everyone ponders their next course of action, fearing that Rimuru may become a threat if left unchecked, Arno advises them to remain calm. He reminds them that Rimuru is a former human who desires coexistence with humanity, suggesting there's no need to provoke a confrontation. Rita adds that they should first observe Rimuru's behavior before taking any action. Renard emphasizes the undeniable fact that Rimuru killed 20,000 knights without hesitation, highlighting the clear threat he poses. He questions whether it's prudent to trust Rimuru's intentions blindly. In response, Hinata assures them that she has a plan in mind and urges the others to continue gathering information. However, the 7 Days clergy inquire if Rahim has another message for them. Rahim presents Hinata with a message crystal from Rimuru, wherein Rimuru challenges Hinata to a one-on-one duel, surprising everyone present. This prompts a discussion on the appropriate course of action. Some paladins offer to take Hinata's place in the duel, but Sarai advises against provoking Rimuru further, echoing Hinata's earlier sentiments. Rita agrees, pointing out the potential consequences of escalating tensions, especially with Veldora allied with Rimuru. Hinata ponders the meaning behind Rimuru's message, finding it peculiar that Rimuru seeks vengeance now. She questions why ours of the 7 Days clergy knew about Rahim's message from Rimuru. Despite her reservations, she decides to meet Rimuru as he has called for her. Ars expresses support for her decision, and the other members of the 7 Days clergy assure Hinata of her capability to defeat Rimuru if negotiations turn sour. They remind her of Veldora's allegiance to Rimuru and entrust her with a sword named the Dragon Buster to counter the dragon's influence. Hinata perceives that the 7 Days clergy's intention is for her to confront Veldora, possibly with the hope that both would eliminate each other. Despite her suspicions, she accepts the Dragon Buster sword they offer and bids them farewell as they leave, wishing her luck. Later, as she prepares to depart, Cardinal Nicholas expresses concern about her safety. Hinata reassures him, stating that there's no guarantee that her encounter with Rimuru will result in conflict. Meanwhile, Rimuru learns that Hinata is approaching, accompanied by 4 paladins. Speculating on her intentions, he wonders if she plans to engage in combat, especially considering her carrying a large sword. Rimuru realizes she may be serious and questions the effectiveness of his earlier message. As Rimuru instructs Sokka to monitor the situation, Diablo informs him of Rahim's death, likely at the hands of someone else. Rimuru is incredulous at the news and learns of rumors suggesting demon involvement in Rahim's demise, leading to increased mobilization of temple knights under King Edward. Rimuru ponders the sudden escalation of events and its implications. The scene shifts to Rimuru and his forces discussing Hinata's advance towards them. Rimuru learns that Hinata and her group have evaded the surveillance of Sokka's team. Soy reports that temple knights from neighboring nations are en route to Falmouth, numbering around 30,000. Their mission is to apprehend the demon responsible for Rahim's death, believing it to be the same demon supporting it. They conclude that they can't rely on other nations or Falmouth's nobles for support due to this development. Diablo takes responsibility for sending Rahim as their envoy, and considers it his failure. Shin agrees with Diablo and proposes taking command, intending to lead an army to eliminate the royalty and nobility. Rimuru rejects this idea and reassures Diablo that everyone makes mistakes. He encourages Diablo to rectify his errors rather than dwell on them. Shuna supports Rimuru's stance, advising Diablo not to be discouraged by small mistakes. Diablo questions if Rimuru wants him to proceed with the plan, to which Rimuru affirms, and Diablo agrees. Shuna suggests seeking advice from Adelman, a former high priest of Luminism, regarding the Western Holy Church. Rimuru recalls that Adelman was the individual guarding Clayman's castle. Gabai Ru informs him that Adelman is currently stationed at the sealed cave, and Rimuru uses thought communication to summon him. Upon seeing Rimuru in person, Adelman expresses his delight and showers him with praise. Shuna reminds him of their limited time and urges him to stay focused. Adelman then reveals his past role as a cardinal at the Western Holy Church, which Rimuru acknowledges as one of the church's highest positions. Adelman explains that the Holy Empire of Loblius is a theocratic state with God Luminous as its central deity, and the Holy Emperor serves as the deity's spokesperson, although their identity remains concealed. The day-to-day affairs of the nation are managed by the papacy, with the Western Holy Church functioning as a branch under its authority. Originally, the Western Holy Church operated as a missionary organization to spread Luminism's teachings without possessing a standing army. However, the papacy established the Temple Knights to safeguard believers from monster threats, leading to tensions with other nations. To address this, the Master Rooks, a division directly controlled by the Holy Emperor, was formed to oversee the Temple Knights. This division held significant power and authority over the Temple Knights, later augmented by the inclusion of paladins, further strengthening the church's influence. Rimuru is curious about the situation, and Adelman suggests that the presence of the 7 Days clergy might be involved. During his time, these clergy members held significant power, second only to the emperor, and their actions seemed suspicious. The church was deteriorating morally at that time, and they even set a trap for Adelman. Rimuru sympathizes with Adelman's past experience, understanding that he must have faced numerous challenges. Adelman explains that Hinata trained the paladins, who were losing their former selves, into the strongest Knight Corps. As a result, Loblius gained control over both the Master Rooks and the paladins. Adelman warns Rimuru to be cautious, mentioning that Loblius houses a group called the 10 Great Saints, enlightened individuals similar to Demon Lord Seeds, evolved through rigorous training. Among them are the 3 battle sages from the Master Rooks, and the 6 commanders from the paladin, along with Hinata, forming the 10 Great Saints. Rimuru speculates that the 4 individuals accompanying Hinata may be from the 10 Great Saints. Adelman proposes reasoning with Hinata to reconsider her faith and align with Rimuru instead. However, Rimuru declines this suggestion, asking Adelman to depart for the time being. After Adelman leaves, Rimuru decides they should formulate countermeasures with the acquired information. Veldora wonders if it's his time to take action, and Rimuru assigns him the role of their last line of defense. Excited by the idea, Veldora agrees, and Rimuru believes this arrangement will help prevent Veldora from losing control. Benimaru then outlines the assignments for Yam's reinforcements, starting with 100 fighters from Gabai Ru's team, followed by 100 members of Team Kurenai who will lead the group. Additionally, there will be 4,000 green numbers and 100 goblin riders led by Gobta, totaling 4,300 in forces. However, Gobta expresses uncertainty about joining the mission. Benimaru appoints Hakuro as the supreme commander, with assurance of his backup if needed. Rimuru instructs Ranga to accompany Gobta and the others to ensure their safety, easing Gobta's concerns. Rimuru then consults Diablo about his plan. Diablo expresses surprise at the unexpected 30,000 reinforcements, initially estimating only around 10,000 from the new king. He intends for Admaris to send a letter to Edward to question his actions, anticipating that Edward will disavow the contract, leading to Admaris's execution. This would nullify the agreement, potentially provoking a joint resistance from other nations if it escalates to military action. Diablo reveals that Admaris is currently in Nidalunderyome's protection, with a force of 5,000 troops. The original plan was to teleport their 4,300 forces there at once, but against 30,000 troops, it seems insufficient. Rimuru considers the option of abandoning the plan to avoid war by forgiving the remaining debt. However, Kayan advises against it, fearing it would make Rimuru appear weak. Diablo insists on proceeding with the plan, assuring Rimuru that innocent casualties won't be an issue. Rimuru inquires about Diablo's plans. Diablo explains he aims to uncover the culprit behind framing him and may find an associate among the 30,000 troops. He intends to conduct gentle interrogations. Benimaru assures that Diablo's direct involvement will alleviate concerns. He asks Hakuro if he can subdue the new king's soldiers without fatalities, which Hakuro confirms. Benimaru then finalizes attack strategy, inadvertently excluding Rimuru from the planning. Rimuru offers well wishes to the team and shifts focus to strategizing against Hinata and her group. Soi delivers an urgent report from Hokusu, revealing 100 mounted knights from Ingratia are en route, likely to rendezvous with Hinata. Soi estimates a 2-week arrival time for Hinata, with the accompanying knights to follow suit. Rimuru deliberates handling Hinata alone, but ponders how to address the remaining 4 knights. Veldora facetiously suggests obliterating them with his dragon's breath, but Rimuru rebuffs the idea, emphasizing Veldora's crucial defensive role. Rimuru speculates Hinata's intentions may involve dialogue, a notion supported by Raphael. Rimuru considers the possibility of resolving matters through dialogue if Hinata's intentions are peaceful, recalling Shizu's concerns about her. He expresses his reluctance to resort to violence without understanding their motive, instructing everyone to avoid killing the paladins. Shin comprehends Rimuru's strategy of holding back the other paladins while he confronts Hinata, proposing that her Team Reborn handle this task with their 100 members. However, Rimuru deems Team Reborn's strength insufficient for the challenge, given their C rank. Benimaru suggests that Team Reborn's unique abilities, such as complete memory and self-regeneration, could deceive the paladins, making them suitable for stalling tactics. He offers to dispatch Team Kurenai to support them if needed. Rimuru is introduced to Gabwa, the leader of Team Kurenai, who expresses her readiness to take on the task. Rimuru entrusts Gabwa and Shin with the responsibility. Now, Rimuru focuses on dealing with the 4 individuals accompanying Hinata, contemplating who among the remaining forces can face the same. He considers Benimaru, Shin, and Soi as viable candidates for this task. Raphael suggests the presence of potential high-level fighters among the paladins, prompting Rimuru to inquire about any formidable fighters among them. Soi confirms that all the paladins are at least a rank, but none of them particularly stand out. Rimuru believes that stronger individuals are adept at concealing their presence, and instructs Shin to keep an eye on the paladins. Benimaru suggests that he and Soi handle 2 of Hinata's companions each, while Shunna, Rigor, and Rigard express their desire to assist. However, Rimuru deems it too risky for them to participate. Albize and Sophia enter the room, offering to join the fight as a way to repay Rimuru, with the added incentive of Lord Carrion urging them to act. Benimaru supports their inclusion, and Rimuru agrees. He emphasizes that protecting their allies' lives is paramount, and urges everyone to act swiftly if they feel threatened, expressing hope that they all emerge unscathed as usual. Meanwhile, in another location, Glenda updates the group on the progress of their plan, noting Hinata's continued ignorance of their actions. Granville informs Demrata that their deception has been exposed, but Demrata brushes it off, confident in their gains. Trusting Granville, Demrata acknowledges their shared objective of eliminating Hinata. However, he highlights the Western Holy Church as their next challenge, given the taming of the evil dragon by Rimuru. Granville questions whether the group of 5 is significant enough to concern Rimuru, but Demrata emphasizes their collective intelligence and alignment with their interests. He proposes collaboration after the Empire conquers the West to control its economy. Granville, however, opposes the idea, prompting Demrata to question his stance. Glenda threatens Demrata with a gun, but Granville intervenes, preferring not to upset the balance of power in Falmouth. Afterwards, Rimuru wonders what Hinata will do next. Meanwhile, we see Hinata and her group camping at night. While everyone else sleeps, Hinata keeps guard, remembering when she realized the other paladins were following her. When they caught up, she asked why they were there since she was just going to talk to Rimuru. Arno replied that no one would believe that given how well armed she was. Fritz pointed out that Rimuru never said she had to come alone. Hinata wondered if they realized they were dealing with a demon lord. She reminded them that she was the one who angered Rimuru, making it her problem. She told them to go back, but they ignored her. Arnaud explained that the others wanted to join, but since they couldn't all leave, they left behind Renard and drew lots to decide who would accompany her. Hinata thought to herself that they were a bunch of fools, but she wasn't really mad they followed her. The scene then shifts to Hinata's group in the Kingdom of Blumen. They notice the kingdom has advanced significantly, with fine weapons made from monster materials and fashion on par with Ingratia. Fritz wondered if this was due to Tempest's influence, and Hinata agreed it likely was. Rita couldn't believe they had so much prosperity from doing business with a demon lord, and they noticed how happy the average citizens seemed. Bacchus then mentioned he was getting hungry, and they stumbled upon a weird-looking restaurant. Hinata notices it's a ramen shop and heads inside quickly. They order some tonkatsu ramen, and the other paladins ask what kind of food it is. Hinata tastes the ramen and finds it amazing. She wonders how they managed to replicate the flavors so well. Seeing her enjoyment, the others try it too. They all love the ramen, realizing they've never tasted anything like it before. Hinata suspects Rimuru is involved. The waitress then brings them some gyoza. Hinata quickly eats one, burning her tongue. The others are surprised that the captain of the paladins can't handle hot food. They think it must be something else, but soon realize Hinata really has a sensitive tongue. The others try the gyoza and also find it delicious. They are not satisfied even after finishing the entire plate and try to order more. The waitress tells them they are out of stock, mentioning it's a new product directly from the Demon Lord with limited supply. Hinata thinks she must have been taught to advertise it this way. After paying their bill, they leave the shop. As they travel towards the great forest of Jura, they note that the path, supposed to be treacherous, has been so smooth it's boring. The road is as neatly paved as the ones in Ingratia's capital, and Rita mentions she can't even sense any monsters around. Hinata mentions that there's an anti-magic barrier around the highway, and Bacchus thinks this explains why so many merchants from Blumund are coming through. They spot some monsters on the way and prepare for an attack, but Hinata stops them, noting that the monsters don't seem hostile. Goblin guards approach and ask if they're adventurers. Hinata says they are, sort of. The guards warn them not to litter or fight on the highway, and inform them about water fountains every 10 kilometers for camping. For more safety, there are patrol stations every 20 kilometers, and inns every 40 kilometers if they have money. They also mention glowing stone tablets every 10 kilometers that maintain the barrier, advising not to touch them to avoid penalty. Hinata thanks the guards for the information. They refill water at the nearest drinking fountain, surprised it's free. Hinata notices the place is like a campsite, and feels irritated, realizing Rimuru is on a whole other level. She remembers Yuki telling her that Rimuru has room to do whatever he wants, and now she sees he was right. Rimuru wouldn't be able to focus on these things otherwise. Later, at an inn, the paladins discuss how the highway reflects Rimuru's leadership. They agree that Rimuru seems more devoted to his people than most barons, acting more like a good governor than a demon lord. Bacchus mentions there's a lot they can learn from Rimuru to implement in Loblius. Ritas is relieved they never declared Rimuru a divine enemy, and hopes he will accept Hinata's apology. Hinata vows to be sincere in her apology, but is prepared to duel if Rimuru insists. She notices a goblin talking with a human as if it's normal, realizing Rimuru truly desires coexistence with humans. She wonders why he would want to fight her if this is the case. Meanwhile, in Tempest, Rimuru receives news that Hinata's party will arrive this evening. Soy asks if Rimuru really doesn't want him to poison Hinata, and Rimuru confirms he doesn't. Benimaru points out that Hinata arrived without using magic, which seems bold and possibly a diversion. Rimuru considers this and asks Soy about the other group. Soy reports they are laying low on the old path and might not have noticed the other paladins if they hadn't seen them leave Ingratia. Rimuru realizes they are in battle mode and worries about them deploying their holy field. Renard and Guard lead the other group. Renard notices the low magicule density in the forest and wonders if Veldora's resurrection was a lie. He recalls that after Hinata's party left, the 7 days clergy secretly approached him. They claimed Hinata was involved with Demon Lord Valentine, who revealed this as he begged for mercy when they were about to kill him. The clergy also said Hinata is now trying to connect with Demon Lord Rimuru. Renard was shocked to hear this, as Hinata's faith is stronger than anyone he knows. He insisted she would never betray them. The 7 days clergy told him these were just suspicions and asked for his help to confirm them once and for all. When Renard asked what he needed to do, they told him to defeat Demon Lord Rimuru. They said that if Hinata was indeed involved with Rimuru, she would rush to stop him. Renard expressed doubts, noting Rimuru had Veldora on his side. The clergy questioned whether Veldora had truly awakened, calling it too absurd to believe. They noted that only the Holy Emperor and Hinata claimed to know of his revival, and even Rahim hadn't seen the dragon. They suggested Hinata might be deceiving the Holy Emperor. They pointed out that Hinata had already encountered Rimuru once and suspected that this was when she fell under his influence. Since then, they believed she had been doing Rimuru's bidding. Renard wondered if Hinata could really betray them, but felt he was the only one who could save her. He assured the clergy he would prove her innocence. Later, Renard gave a speech to the paladins, announcing their plan to seize the entire town. He instructed the troops to split up and take their positions. However, before they could act, they were ambushed by Team Reborn. Renard realizes it's an ambush, and Guard wonders if Hinata has betrayed them. Soy then informs Rimuru that Shin has intercepted the paladins, and a battle has begun. Rimuru thinks Hinata must have decided to fight, and just then, Hinata receives a magic call from Nicholas. Nicholas tells her that the 3 battle sages are secretly involved in Falmouth's civil war. Hinata asks if the Holy Emperor ordered this. Nicholas says the details are unclear, but it must be significant since they're defying her orders. He warns her to beware of the 7 days clergy, but Hinata can't hear the last part as her communication gets cut off. She realizes someone is blocking her communication, and then senses Renard nearby. She discovers he's in a fight and heads over to check it out. Meanwhile, Rimuru tells his team that he intercepted Hinata's magic call, and that she's heading to the battlefield. He decides they should move out, saying he will engage Hinata. His team assures him they'll ensure no one interferes with their duel, and they all set off. We then see Team Reborn and Kurenai fighting the Paladins, who struggle against Team Reborn. The Paladins are confused as their opponents don't go down even after heavy injuries. Team Reborn is effortlessly taking out the Paladins with single hits. It turns out Team Reborn's weapons are laced with a potent sleep medicine, making a single hit enough to incapacitate anyone. Rimuru and his team teleport to the battlefield and are pleasantly surprised to see Team Reborn and Kurenai performing better than expected. They have already subdued half of the Paladins. Shin then orders Gabwa and Gobzo to join the battle. Initially hesitant since it wasn't part of the plan, Gabwa is inspired by Shin's words about achieving victory against a stronger foe to level up. She dives into the battle with enthusiasm. Gobzo is still unsure, but Shin uses her notoriously bad cooking as a threat to motivate him into fighting. Rimuru wonders if this deviation from the plan will be alright. Benimaru reassures him, believing that Shin is confident they can win. Rimuru decides there's no need to hold back. Albiz and Sophia note that Team Reborn and Kurenai are proving formidable. Soi suggests they might actually win if things continue as they are. Hinata and her group arrive at the battlefield and see the Paladins are losing. Hinata wonders what Renard and Guard are doing here. Realizing negotiations are now impossible, she spots Rimuru with his Honest and the 3 Biscuiteers. She explains that Honest are evolved ogres, each a special ranked threat. Hinata notices both sides have an equal number of fighters, indicating Rimuru wants an uninterrupted duel. Shin spots Rimuru and comments that everything is going according to plan, though Rimuru corrects her, saying none of this was planned. Ignoring him, Shin heads into the battle herself. Finally, Hinata approaches Rimuru, and they prepare to fight. The scene then cuts to Luminous gazing at a frozen girl, admiring her beauty. Louis arrives, and Luminous is annoyed by the interruption. He explains that there's an urgent matter. Hinata is moving to take down Demon Lord Rimuru, and he suspects the 7 Days clergy might be involved. Luminous is shocked, and Gunther is annoyed that Louis is bothering Luminous with what he considers trivial nonsense. Louis insists they might lose Hinata if they don't act. Gunther argues that Louis shouldn't have let Hinata confront Rimuru if this is the case. Luminous intervenes, thinking the 7 Days clergy are becoming a problem since Roy's departure and may need reorganization. She decides she doesn't have time for this right now and asks them to follow her. Before leaving, she tells the frozen girl to wait for her. The scene shifts to the Jura forest, where Shin joins the battle. Renard and Guard are amazed by her power, realizing she is no pushover. Renard is shocked that a mere follower of Rimuru exudes such a strong aura. Shin introduces herself as Rimuru's top secretary, and declares they can either surrender or face death as per Rimuru's orders. She implies they should be smart enough to understand the gravity of her words. Renard responds that they understand but have no intention of surrendering. The Paladins then erect a holy field around them. Noticing this, Rimuru comments that they seem to favor this barrier spell. He tells Hinata that since she initiated military action in his territory, he considers her hostile. He adds that he won't let her strike first. Hinata acknowledges his position but claims she doesn't know why Renard and the others disobeyed her orders. Rimuru is skeptical and accuses her of killing Rahim to frame them. Hinata is shocked to hear that Rahim is dead and begins to understand the situation. Rimuru asks if she received his message, and she confirms she did. He questions if this attack is her response, but Hinata insists it's unrelated. She admits that Rimuru probably won't listen to her now. Rimuru says he might listen, but only if she stops her forces and sends them back. Arno, worried about Hinata, wonders what will happen to her if they withdraw, pointing out that there's no guarantee Rimuru won't harm her since he called her here. Benimaru steps in, asserting that only Rimuru and Hinata should be speaking. He tells Arno to stay back since he wasn't called. Arno attempts to attack Benimaru, but Benimaru blocks it effortlessly. Arno claims he wasn't trying to disrupt Hinata's negotiations, just testing Benimaru's reactions. Benimaru replies that he also prefers not to interfere, and suggests they continue elsewhere. As the other paladins try to intervene, the Biscuiteers step in, promising to entertain the paladins and inviting them to show the strength of the 10 great saints. Bacchus and Fritz step away to engage them, and Soi tells Ritus they should join the fray as well. Hinata and Rimuru prepare to fight. Meanwhile, Renard speculates that Shin must be an Oni, noting that if so, she could be as powerful as a regional god with the potential to become a demon lord. Shin corrects him, explaining that while the others are honest, she took a different path in her evolution and became a wicked Oni. She warns them not to expect her to play nice. Renard dismisses her as a blasphemous monster and vows to purify her. The paladins attack Shin with their holy cannon, but she uses her sword to deflect their spells like a home run. Renard is shocked, knowing that the holy cannon is designed to disassemble magic particles and should be a fatal attack against monsters. He can't believe Shin didn't even try to dodge it. Shin then asks the paladins if this is their answer to her earlier question. Rimuru and Hinata clash swords, with Hinata surprised by how much Rimuru has improved in such a short time. She realizes she can't use her usurper skill on him, indicating he's on the same level as Lady Luminous. This revelation dampens her desire to fight, but she knows she can't back down. She discards her sword and casts a spell, leaving Rimuru wondering what she's doing. Raphael informs him that she is materializing holy elemental power and projecting it onto anti-monster equipment with a holy alignment. Hinata now dons armor and wields a different sword. She recalls Rimuru asking if she received his message, understanding that he wants to settle their feud with a duel. Rimuru observes that Hinata's new sword is unlike any he has seen before, and Raphael confirms it is a legendary level weapon. Noticing Hinata's flawless defenses, Rimuru regrets not having Kurobe finish reforging his personal katana sooner. He then infuses his sword with dark flames, and they cross blades again. Meanwhile, Shin tells the paladins to surrender while she's still being nice. Guard warns her not to think she has the upper hand just because she blocked their attacks once. Shin then lowers her sword and mentions that Rimuru has ordered her to avoid killing the paladins as much as possible. She promises not to harm them if they surrender now and even offers to let them try her famous cuisine. Renard insists that paladins don't negotiate with monsters. Shin says she prefers to avoid killing them and wants to prove her strength to make them submit. She tries to make an offer, but Guard interrupts, and she blasts his ear with a precise attack. Guard, now angry but impressed by her accuracy, listens as Renard asks Shin to state her offer. Shin proposes they hit her with their most powerful attack. If she's still standing, they must surrender. Renard, considering her words, wonders if she truly doesn't want to kill them. Guard agrees to the challenge and instructs the other paladins to channel all their elemental power to him, asking Renard to stabilize it. Renard agrees to the plan. Guard then concentrates the combined power of the paladins and attacks Shin, but she easily slices through it using her Master Chef skill. She tells them to surrender, and Renard admits they are completely outmatched. However, Guard refuses to give up, claiming that as long as the holy field is in place, Shin is helpless. He says it's now a battle of endurance. Shin warns she will have to kill them if they don't admit defeat. Renard tries to stop Guard, recognizing Shin's overwhelming power, but Guard insists that a paladin never accepts defeat. Renard notices something seems off about Guard, thinking he can be short-tempered but never this irrational. Shin then destroys the holy field with her sword, surprising the paladins. Guard wonders how a monster could break the holy barrier. Shin explains that it was just a special barrier modifying the laws of matter, and was no match for her Master Chef skill. She reveals her ability to forcefully achieve desired outcomes. Renard and Guard surrender, hoping Shin will treat their men fairly. Shin assures them that Rimuru is kind and was hoping to resolve things through dialogue with their leader. Renard notices Rimuru and Hinata fighting and realizes the doubts of the 7 days clergy were unfounded. He asks Shin why they're fighting if Rimuru wanted to talk. Shin explains that the fight started because the paladins invaded their territory. Renard admits fault, as he led the paladins there to prove her innocence. Meanwhile, Rimuru struggles to keep up with Hinata's attacks. He thought he would have an easier time defeating her. Hinata observes that while Rimuru's physical abilities have grown, his techniques are still unpolished, unlike the skills she has honed over the past 10 years. Hinata recalls her mentor, Shizu, and the skills she learned from her. She regrets not expressing her gratitude properly. With this experience, she crosses swords with Rimuru again, nearly landing a hit. Rimuru worries about what will happen if Hinata lands a hit. Raphael tells him the blow wouldn't be lethal, but would drain a significant amount of his energy. Rimuru is relieved but knows it will still be costly if he gets hit. Raphael explains that Hinata's sword emits a special wavelength that can penetrate Rimuru's multi-layered barrier by overriding the laws of matter. Rimuru realizes the danger and prepares for another attack from Hinata. He considers waiting for her to tire out, as he won't get exhausted no matter how long they fight. However, Hinata starts moving faster, and some of her attacks begin to get through. Raphael warns that Rimuru is being lured into her planned attack zone. Rimuru asks Raphael for a solution, and Raphael learns a new ability called Predict Future Attack. With this ability, Rimuru can see Hinata's attacks before she makes them, identifying which ones are feints and only deflecting the real threats. Rimuru feels confident he can win now, and Hinata notices his changed fighting style. She realizes he's predicting her moves more accurately than her compute prediction skill. Seeing that the other paladins have finished their battles, she suggests ending their fight with the next strike, warning him that her move will be dangerous. She asks if he's willing to accept it. Raphael informs Rimuru that Hinata has no desire to kill him. Rimuru, confused, realizes something has felt off from the start but doesn't have time to dwell on it. He asks Hinata if he will win if he withstands her next attack and makes her promise not to interfere with his nation afterward. She agrees, revealing that she only accepted the duel because she thought he requested it. Rimuru is surprised to hear this and puzzled by the misunderstanding. Hinata tells Rimuru that this is what he said in his message. Rimuru recalls that he mentioned wanting to talk things out but also said he'd face her if she didn't like that idea. He suggested settling things between them if she preferred, but his main goal was a verbal discussion. He insists he never proposed a duel. Hinata readies her attack, explaining that it's usually a guaranteed kill. She strikes, and Raphael informs Rimuru that the attack is unblockable and unavoidable. Raphael suggests sacrificing the Beelzebub skill to negate the attack. Rimuru agrees and withstands the blow, remaining standing. The paladins are shocked, but Rimuru's followers expected this outcome. However, Rimuru then collapses. Hinata remarks that Rimuru must have taken the attack on purpose. Rimuru, confused, thinks no one would willingly endure such an attack but then notices Raphael acting oddly and realizes it was Raphael's doing. Hinata admits defeat, and Raphael detects thought interference from the sword Hinata dropped earlier. Hinata realizes the 7 days clergy are behind this. The sword moves to attack Rimuru, but Hinata protects him. The scene then shifts to Nidalmigam Earldom in Falmouth. Damrata comments that this place will soon become the center of conflict. He explains that Edward will accuse him and Admaris of embezzling funds meant for Demon Lord Rimuru, claiming the upper class is outraged. This accusation will lead to Admaris's downfall. Edward will then deploy his troops, but Ihem and Admaris will deny these false accusations. Ihem has received reinforcements from Rimuru, making war inevitable. Damrata thinks Demon Lord Rimuru is too naive for not abandoning it, and by now, Hinata should have realized that he lied to her. Damrata had hoped to eliminate Hinata here, but now thinks it might be wiser to retreat. He notes that his mission wasn't a complete failure, but he still has unfinished business. His maid understands he is talking about avenging Raham's death, and she comments that the 5 elders are demanding a lot from him. Damrata mentions that he has heard Majin Rizin is serving a powerful demon. If this demon can defeat Rizin, it might be more than just an ordinary archdemon. He believes there's nothing they can do if this is true, so he decides they will leave the nation after assigning an observer to stay behind. The maid asks what they should do with the demon hunters they brought from home. Damrata suggests leaving them as a gift for the new king. He plans to make the demon problem Edward's responsibility, and thinks of leaving another present for the new king. The scene shifts to Edmaris's Viscounty in the Kingdom of Falmouth. Edward recalls being worried when he learned that Demon Lord Rimuru was supporting him. However, he now has the 3 battle sages of Loblius on his side and has heard that Hinata is coming to slay Rimuru. He feels fortunate, thinking the heavens have not abandoned him. Edward's only issue was finding a just cause to move his army to Niddle. Thanks to Earl Niddle's request from the Eastern Merchant, this problem is resolved. This request is the gift Damrata mentioned earlier. Edward is pleased that Damrata has also provided him with a team specializing in demon hunting. He feels all his problems are now solved and orders his army to commence their attack. He instructs his general, Gaston, to lead 5,000 troops to attack the town where Ihem is hiding. Sarai suggests they take Grigori with them. Edward agrees, noting that Falmouth lost many soldiers in the battle against Rimuru and is confident Grigori will be a valuable asset. Edward is pleased, and Grigori secretly asks Sarai if he's supposed to babysit the troops. Sarai explains that it's just a cover and that Grigori's real target is the demon who killed Ra. Rumor has it that the demon is with him as part of the reinforcements, and Sarai wants Grigori to draw him out. Grigori understands and leaves with General Gaston. Meanwhile, Glenda notices that Damrata is nowhere to be found and realizes he has fled. She decides she can sacrifice the demon hunters if necessary. Diablo is spying on the enemy from above. He vows to punish them all for embarrassing him in front of Rimuru. He sees that 2 of the great saints are with the king, and 1 is leaving with 5,000 soldiers. He telepathically informs Hakuro about the great saint heading his way with the soldiers, noting that Ranga should be able to handle it. Diablo mentions that the man is connected to Loblius, where the rumors about him began. He asks Hakuro to instruct Ranga to capture him alive, as they could use him for negotiations. Hakuro states he'll send the Goblin Riders and Dragonites with Ranga and assures Diablo he will handle everything there. Diablo then approaches the enemy camp, greeting the king and 2 battle sages. The soldiers take defensive positions, and reporters gather around. Diablo creates a barrier to protect the reporters, not wanting to harm them. Edward asks why Diablo is there. Diablo says he's there to give a warning. They should withdraw their forces and make peace with him if they want to avoid his wrath. Edward laughs and says a demon has no right to meddle in their nation's affairs. He accuses Admaris and others of planning to charge double reparations and calls Rimuru greedy for money. Diablo gets angry hearing Rimuru insulted. Edward claims he has proof against them and shows a recording of Rayam's death, though it doesn't reveal the killer. Diablo dismisses it as proving nothing. Edward insists he has evidence and Diablo should stay silent. Diablo says he won't engage in a battle of wits with someone as simple-minded as Edward. He proposes a test. If the humans can defeat him, neither he nor his master will take further action against them. He warns that he has never lost before and they should be ready to face the consequences of slandering his master. The king, frightened, orders the demon hunters to kill Diablo. The demon hunters bind Diablo with chains, telling him not to underestimate their anti-demon strategies from the east. Diablo asks the demon hunters if they are ready, and to give him the signal when they are prepared. The demon hunters realize he let himself be caught on purpose and say they'll make him regret his arrogance. They attack him with non-magical lightning, claiming it will destroy his body and there's nothing he can do. Others think this might defeat Diablo, but it has no effect. The demon hunters ask why the lightning didn't work. Diablo replies that it was too weak and mentions his strong resistance to natural influence. He then starts the test, releasing his aura. Everyone inside the barrier faints, except for the leader of the demon hunters and the two battle sages. Reporters are surprised to see him use Conqueror's hacking, and Diablo is impressed that 3 of them remain standing. He praises them for withstanding his lord's ambition, even though he was holding back. The demon hunter leader says Diablo is bluffing, as only demon lord class monsters can use lord's ambition. He insists it's impossible for an archdemon to become a demon lord. Diablo explains that demons can evolve to the next stage under the right conditions, even if they have a limit to their energy. He mentions the demon lord called Red and says demons need to live for 2,000 years and build their strength to maximum to evolve. He also mentions White, a figure the demon hunters should know about from the east. Realizing who Diablo is, the demon hunter leader becomes terrified, understanding he cannot win. He begs Diablo to spare his life, but Diablo, wanting to have some fun, is not ready to let him go easily. The demon hunter apologizes to Diablo, saying he will do anything Diablo asks. Diablo tells him to get the unconscious people out of the barrier. Sari and Glenda realize that Diablo is not an ordinary archdemon but still don't know who he truly is, so they prepare to fight him. Sari introduces himself to Diablo and asks for his name. Diablo introduces himself as a butler working for Rimuru. Sari wonders why Diablo is hiding his true identity, and then attacks him. Diablo parries all his attacks. Sari tells Diablo to stop being vague about Red and White and reveal who he really is. Diablo then reveals that he has evolved into a demon peer, causing the demon hunter leader to faint. Sari turns pale upon hearing this, thinking that demon peers are legendary beings said to surpass even demon lords. He is shocked that Rimuru named someone like Diablo. While Sari hesitates, Glenda attacks Diablo with a throwing knife, but it has no effect. Diablo explains that physical attacks don't work on him. Sari and Glenda are stunned by this revelation. Sari asks Glenda to fight Diablo with him, but he notices that she is running away. Sari thinks he has no choice but to buy time until Grigori returns. Meanwhile, Ranga has engaged Grigori's forces. Grigori and his soldiers see Ranga flying, and they have no way to counter this. The general asks Grigori for orders, but before Grigori can respond, Ranga wipes out the entire army single-handedly, and then faces Grigori. The Goblin Riders and the Dragonates are on their way to the battle and think there won't be anything left for them to do at this rate. When they arrive, they see that Ranga has defeated everyone. Ranga is playing with Grigori like a ball, and Gobda stops him from accidentally killing Grigori. Ranga says this human seems to want to play more, but Gobda tells him that Rimuru will scold him if he doesn't stop, so Ranga stops immediately. Sokka then tells Gaston to retreat his forces, assuring them they won't be chased. The soldiers run away faster than Saitama going to assail. Back at the fight, Sari continues, hoping Grigori will arrive any minute. Diablo asks him to show more of his skills. Sari uses an aura-imbued attack, but Diablo disassembles the aura on the blade before it can hit him. Sari tries the same attack a few more times, but Diablo parries all of them. Sari realizes that Diablo can kill him at any time, but is choosing not to, indicating he has no intention of killing him. Sari thinks there's no reason for someone as strong as Diablo to go out of his way to kill Rahim and concludes that Diablo isn't the one who did it. He remembers Hinata saying they shouldn't interfere, but the Archbishop was killed right after she left, as if someone timed it perfectly. Sari figures out who was behind it all when 3 of the 7 days clergy arrive. They say they'll deal with the demon using their magic. Diablo understands they're here to clean up evidence. The clergy then attack the reporters, and the scene shifts to Tempest. Hinata tries to heal herself, but her healing magic doesn't work. Rimuru uses a full potion on her, but it also has no effect. Raphael explains that Hinata has high magic resistance, causing her body to disassemble and neutralize magic. Arno says only holy magic works on Hinata, so Rita's tries to heal her with holy magic. But 2 of the 7 days clergy arrive, binding Rita's and the other paladins, announcing they're there to punish Hinata for disobeying orders. Rimuru thinks that these must be the guys Adelman mentioned and tells them not to get in his way. He states that he and Hinata have already settled their differences, and he won't let her die. The 7 days clergy respond, saying they can't allow this because Hinata has ignored the will of their Lord Luminous, and they can't let this go unpunished. Renard tells them to stop pretending, revealing that he knows they tricked him and had planned to eliminate Hinata from the beginning. At this moment, Guard stabs Renard, accusing him of conspiring with the rebel Hinata and deceiving everyone. Bacchus and Fritz are left bewildered, trying to grasp what's happening. Raphael then informs Rimuru that Guard's wavelength is similar to the one that interfered with the sword earlier. Rimuru instructs Shin to strip off Guard's cover, suspecting he might be one of the 7 days clergy. As Guard removes his disguise, Rimuru's suspicion is confirmed. The 7 days clergy caution Rimuru against using violence, warning it could lead to war. Rimuru asserts that in his nation, they perform body checks on suspicious visitors. At this moment, Diablo contacts Rimuru telepathically, informing him that he has just discovered the 7 days clergy were responsible for killing Ran. He mentions that he is currently confronting 3 of them and asks for instructions. Rimuru inquires if there is proof they are the real killers. Diablo confirms, mentioning that journalists from around the world are eyewitnesses. Rimuru then gives Diablo permission to eliminate them. Rimuru orders Benimaru and Soi to work with Shin and capture the 7 days clergy, instructing them to take any necessary measures if the clergy resist. The 7 days clergy question if Rimuru is prepared to start an all-out war against them. Rimuru asserts that the 7 days clergy shouldn't speak of starting war since they were the ones who killed Archbishop Rahim and tampered with his message of peace. He points out that trying to frame his butler was a mistake, as their cover has now been blown. The paladins are stunned to learn that the 7 days clergy were behind everything. The 7 days clergy declare that with Hinata already dying, they won't miss this chance to dispose of the rest of them as well, now that the truth is out. Benimaru attacks them, but they evade his assault and erect a barrier around everyone else. Despite Soi and Benimaru's combined efforts, their attacks prove ineffective against the barrier. Shin then strikes the barrier with her sword. The 7 days clergy scoff, stating that Shin's attack will be equally futile, but to their surprise, the barrier begins to crack. Rimuru is taken aback, and Raphael explains that Shin has altered the space using the certain outcome effect of her Master Chef skill. Rimuru is amazed, and Raphael adds that this attack could even be effective against him. Realizing their magic circle is at risk of breaking completely, the 7 days clergy decide to release their spell. They cast Trinity Break to attack, but Raphael uses Beelzebub to consume the assault. Rimuru reflects on how they sacrificed Beelzebub earlier to survive Hinata's attack, and Raphael clarifies that she had prepared a backup copy, so it wasn't an issue. Rimuru remarks that Raphael could have informed him earlier. The 7 days clergy then prepare an even stronger attack called Trinity Disintegration. Rimuru observes that Beelzebub won't be effective against this attack, and Raphael suggests using the ultimate skill Uriel's Absolute Defense instead. Rimuru recalls that Uriel's Absolute Defense is the skill he obtained while consolidating his ability, and wonders why they didn't use it to defend against Hinata's attack. He activates this ability, and mentally notes that he will discuss this oversight with Raphael later. After the attack, the 7 days clergy assume Rimuru must be dead, but when the dust settles, they are shocked to find him unharmed. The clergy are incredulous, believing no creature could survive disintegration. Rimuru declares that it's now their turn to attack. He and the Honest prepare for battle, and the 7 days clergy claim they are the guardians of humanity, and that the followers of Lord Luminous will not stay silent about this. They announce their intention to retreat, warning that Lord Luminous's wrath will eventually burn them to ashes. As they try to escape, a gate appears behind them, and outstep Luminous and Louis. The 7 days clergy bow to Luminous, who acknowledges the trouble she has caused Rimuru. Rimuru is astonished to realize that Demon Lord Valentine is actually God Luminous. The scene shifts to Falmouth, where Diablo has successfully protected everyone from the 7 days clergy's attack. The clergy are surprised at his defense and threaten to unleash their sacred power. Diablo informs everyone that it's evident the 7 days clergy intended to kill them from the start, but reassures them that he will protect them. The reporters ask Diablo what he wants in return, and he states he seeks only one thing, for them to spread the truth about the killing of the Archbishop. The reporters eagerly agree, promising to write about how Diablo saved them and asking him to continue protecting them. Diablo then promises to save everyone except for the king. The king, bewildered, asks what he has done to deserve this. Diablo explains that the king mocked the great Rimuru, a crime worthy of 1,000 deaths. Desperate, Edward begs Diablo to save him as well, offering him everything he can: money, power, and even the throne itself. Diablo, considering that Yam the champion is currently guarding Admaris, muses that Yam is the most qualified to lead Falmouth. He asks Edward for his opinion, and Edward, fearful, agrees with him. Edward then announces to the reporters that he wishes to name Yam as his successor, instructing them to write about this as well. The reporters, seeing this as their only way to be saved, praise Yam as the champion king. Diablo, satisfied that his plan is succeeding, turns his attention to dealing with the 7 days clergy. The clergy attempt to use Trinity Break on Diablo, but he declares that he will make them taste despair and activates his skill, Despair Times. The 7 days clergy find themselves in a world of emptiness, bewildered by the disappearance of their spell. Diablo tells them to reflect upon their foolishness in the deepest part of the abyss, and then crushes them. He thinks about reporting this to Rimuru, and the scene shifts to Tempest. Louis introduces himself as the Holy Emperor, and Luminous as their god, surprising the paladins. Rimuru wonders why a demon lord is acting as a god, and Raphael explains that Luminous has the power to create an environment conducive to ruling humans. Luminous then mentions that she had instructed Hinata to restrain herself and proceeds to cast resurrection magic on her. Rimuru wonders how a demon lord can use holy magic but decides now is not the time for question. Meanwhile, Hinata recalls her past. She was summoned to this world while heading to her high school entrance ceremony. Amidst a bandit attack, the bandits, seeing her, thought they could sell her for a good price and intended to have some fun with her before selling her. Hinata thought that this world was no different from her own, a world filled with despair. She remembered how her father started gambling and often subjected her mother to violence. She wanted to fix her broken home, but after her father's death, her mother's heart broke, and Hinata kept losing everything precious to her. Determined not to let things be taken from her anymore, Hinata gained the skill Usurper. She dealt with one of the bandits and concluded that the survival of the fittest was the only unchanging law in the world. Believing there was no error in her calculations, she gained the skill Mathematician. She then dealt with the rest of the bandits, and it was at this moment that Shizu found her. Back in the present, Hinata opens her eyes, and Rimuru, seeing her up close, thinks she looks like an innocent girl. Realizing it's been a decade since she was summoned to this world, he tries to calculate her age. Hinata interrupts his thoughts, asking if he is thinking something rude. Rimuru denies this, and she asks how long he plans to stare at her. He replies that it was a delight to his eyes, and she retorts that he has no tact. She suggests that he mustn't have been popular with women, to which he responds that he was known as a considerate and reliable guy. Luminous then addresses the 7 days clergy, asking if they have any excuse. At the same time, Diablo reports to Rimuru that the job is complete and everything went according to plan. Hinata then proceeds to heal Renard. Afterwards, Luminous sentences the 7 days clergy to death. Despite their desperate pleas for mercy, she coldly informs them that she will personally see to their execution. True to her word, she kills them all swiftly. With the immediate threat eliminated, Rimuru suggests that they relocate to discuss the future of Tempest and Loblia. The scene then shifts to the last of the 7 days clergy, anxiously awaiting a report from his comrades. Nicholas notices his concern and asks if something is wrong. The clergyman admits he recently discovered that Rimuru's message had been tampered with. He declares that he doesn't care about the clergy's objectives, whether it's to gain favor with their Lord Luminous or to exploit her power. The clergyman finds this strange, insisting that their god exists only in their hearts. Nicholas, however, reveals that he has always known that God Luminous is real, having kept this knowledge secret because Hinata wished it so. When the clergyman attempts to act against Nicholas, Nicholas swiftly kills him with disintegration, declaring that he will not let anyone harm Hinata. He states that for him, Hinata is the only god in this world. In the aftermath, it is revealed that Granbell was somehow possessing the clergyman Nicholas killed. Mariabelle then comments on the danger posed by Tempest. Granbell assumes she is referring to the arrival of the angels, but Mariabelle clarifies that she is not. She explains that Rimuru aims to rule the world through economic means, a strategy Granbell initially finds hard to believe. However, Mariabelle insists it's true and emphasizes that this is why they must defeat him. Granbell, convinced by her argument, agrees, and Mariabelle confidently states that she will succeed next time. Rimuru and the others return to Tempest, where they are greeted by Veldora. Sensing the tension, Veldora wonders if it's time for the last line of defense to act. Rimuru reassures him that his intervention won't be necessary this time, much to Veldora's disbelief. Veldora then spots Demon Lord Luminous with Rimuru and calls her out, revealing to the paladins that their revered god Luminous is actually the Demon Lord Luminous Valentine. Irritated by Veldora's outburst, Luminous engages him in a fierce battle. Their clash continues until evening, culminating in Luminous using a powerful attack called Embrace Drain on Veldora. Raphael explains to Rimuru that this attack not only drains the target's energy, but also transfers pain and discomfort to them. Rimuru is astonished that even a spiritual creature like Veldora cannot resist this technique, and the paladins feel a pang of sympathy for him. Luminous, still fuming, declares that she will vent all her frustrations on Veldora, who then desperately pleads with Rimuru for rescue. After the intense confrontation, everyone retreats to the hot springs to relax. They enjoy some food and party hard, taking the time to unwind and celebrate together. The scene shifts to Granbull conversing with Damrata. Granbull is incredulous that Damrata fled from the demon without even engaging it. Damrata defends his actions, stating there was nothing he could do and reminding Granbull that he should have already received the report. He explains that the demon was far beyond his expectations, and he criticizes Granbull for failing to deal with Hinata, which only strengthened her ties with Rimuru. Granbull acknowledges that the long-standing Falmouth Kingdom will now fall, and a new nation will rise in its place. This development aligns with Rimuru's goals, throwing the organization's plans into disarray. Rimuru is transforming the Forest of Jur into a global economic hub, a move they cannot tolerate. Granbull suggests that any further public activity would be ill-advised, particularly in the east. Damrata agrees, noting that there's no point in blaming each other. Granbull proposes that they collaborate to stop this threat. However, Damrata expresses a desire to maintain a good relationship with his family and notes that his organization has no reason to be hostile toward Rimuru. Damrata adds that with Hinata aware of his identity, it will be challenging for him to operate in the Western nation. Thus, he plans to return to his homeland and will provide Granbull with a replacement. He assures Granbull that their transactions will continue as before, then takes his leave. Granbull then contemplates whether Damrata thinks he can exploit him, vowing that once this matter is settled, Damrata and his associates will be next on his list. The scene then transitions to Rimuru holding a meeting with Luminous and others. Rimuru recounts how, after learning Luminous's true identity, Hinata apologized to the group for keeping it a secret. The paladins accepted her apology, expressing that their faith was in Hinata, not God Luminous. Rimuru then shifts the discussion to the future of their two nations. Hinata explains that when Rahim requested the mobilization of the paladin, the church agreed because it could not acknowledge the existence of a nation of monsters. Additionally, she had personal reasons for wanting to confront Rimuru, which Rimuru suspects is related to Shizu. Hinata confirms this, admitting that in retrospect, she realizes she was being manipulated. When Rimuru asks who was using her, she reveals that it was the merchants from the east. Rimuru recalls that Clayman had close ties with some merchants and concludes that they must also be from the east. Hinata recounts how the merchants convinced her that Rimuru had killed Shizu and was residing in Ingratia. Rimuru remarks that her timing for the attack couldn't have been worse, and just recalling the event makes him angry. As his anger flares, he unconsciously releases his aura, prompting Luminous to urge him to stop with the coercion. Rimuru apologizes and states that it's now evident the Eastern merchants were behind everything. These merchants likely instigated Admaris's actions against them. Hinata confirms this, noting that Rahim clarified this during their interrogation. Rimuru then realizes that Clayman was manipulating Falmouth from the shadows, with the Eastern merchants acting as intermediaries for him. Clayman aimed to awaken himself as a true demon lord, while Falmouth sought to seize control of Tempest. The Eastern merchants were deeply involved in these schemes, orchestrating everything. Luminous understands that Rimuru is referring to the individual who provided Clayman with the mind control stone. She is impressed that someone as simple-minded as Clayman never revealed this person's identity, even in the end. Rimuru speculates whether the 7 Days clergy might be involved, but Luminous believes this is unlikely. Louis, however, mentions that they can't completely dismiss this possibility since the 7 Days clergy have been craving Luminous's love energy, especially since it has been 100 years since their last ceremony. Rimuru asks about love energy, and Luminous explains that, being human, the clergy would age without her energy. Louis adds that they were desperate to prevent her from favoring anyone else. Hinata realizes that this desperation is why the clergy attempted to kill her. Louis suggests that they probably intended to awaken Clayman to have him confront Luminous. Hinata understands that, with Clayman defeated, they aim to pit her against Rimuru instead. Rimuru then notes that there are supposed to be 7 members of the clergy, but they have only accounted for 6. Hinata informs them that a cardinal named Nicholas dealt with the last member of the clergy, and Luminous expresses surprise, wondering how he managed to defeat Granbell. Hinata explains that Nicholas took Granbell by surprise with a disintegration spell he had set up in advance. Luminous finds it hard to believe that Granbell fell for such a trap. Hinata questions if Granbell was his real name, and Luminous confirms it was. Granville was also known as the Hero of the Light, and she mentions that they had even fought once. Rimuru is relieved to discover that the Eastern merchants were behind everything, noting that without this information, he might have started suspecting Yuki. The paladins realize he is referring to Yuki Kagurazaka, and Rimuru explains that Yuki was the most suspicious person around but had no apparent reason to make him fight Hinata. Hinata, however, cautions that they cannot completely rule Yuki out as a suspect, suggesting it is premature to assume the mastermind is gone. Benimaru suggests informing everyone about this development, and Rimuru agrees, stating they should remain vigilant moving forward. Shuna then serves everyone scones and fried potatoes, and as Rimuru tries to discuss their future relations, Hinata interjects, saying she first wants to ensure that Rimuru has accepted their apology. Rimuru confirms that he has accepted their apology. Luminous expresses a desire to compensate him somehow, acknowledging that the incident was entirely their fault. Hinata concurs with Luminous. Rimuru suggests that they could officially recognize Tempest as a nation and establish diplomatic ties. Luminous agrees to this proposal. Luminous clarifies that while she does not intend to become close friends, she has a score to settle with Veldora. Rimuru considers that, in the worst-case scenario, he could offer Veldora as a sacrifice. Veldora, sensing something, asks Rimuru if he is thinking of something cruel, to which Rimuru denies. Luminous then proposes a truce for now, suggesting they establish international relations for 100 years as her form of apology. Hinata questions if she is certain about this, and Luminous affirms it. Fritz agrees, noting that if Rimuru were truly evil, they would all be dead by now. Rita agrees, mentioning that Soy was a gentleman. Arno adds that they need to overcome their prejudices against monsters. Renard raises a concern about how they will explain this within the framework of their faith's teaching, as it might significantly shake people's faith in the Western Holy Church. Luminous tells Renard that failing to protect those teachings doesn't count as betraying her, emphasizing that those were essentially a set of rules created by the leaders at the time. This revelation surprises everyone. Luminous clarifies that faith is the most important thing to her, not the specific teaching. She explains that their ability to cast holy magic comes from their faith in her. Renard points out that they have dedicated their lives to following that doctrine, and it wouldn't be wise to discard it so easily. Hinata adds that other nations would have noticed 100 crusaders making their way here, and journalists saw a battle sage defeated. Louis mentions that it could lead to a lot of confusion if it became known that Hinata and the crusaders were defeated. Rimuru suggests they should say that he and Hinata dueled to a draw. Hinata asks if he is okay with this, noting that humans have only defeated a demon lord a handful of times. Renard worries that since Rimuru is a new demon lord, other forces might look down on him because of this. Rimuru asks Benimaru if he can think of any forces that might try to interfere with them. Benimaru replies that he can't, and adds that if anyone is foolish enough to try, he will deal with them harshly. Hinata states that she has no objection to this plan. Fritz suggests that they take this opportunity to announce to the world that the nation and its people aren't evil at all. The others agree with Fritz. Rimuru proposes that they should also involve King Gazelle and sign a 100-year friendship treaty. He believes that if they can get Gazelle to guarantee that they won't attack people, it could change some minds. Hinata agrees that building a little trust will help them convince people, and Louis states that to facilitate their further interactions, he will leave Bacchus and Arno in Tempest. Rimuru responds that they will also build a luminous church in Tempest. The scene then shifts to Luminous and her group preparing to leave. Before their departure, Rimuru returns Hinata's rapier, which he had swallowed last time, and mentions that he has also improved it. Hinata thanks Rimuru for this. As they are about to leave, Rimuru thinks it would be polite to invite them to stay the night and does so. Hinata asks what they will have for dinner. Upon hearing that they will have sukiyaki, they all decide to stay. The scene transitions to a lively party that night, where it is revealed that Rimuru can now get drunk. He explains that at the last party, he discovered Luminous could weaken her poison nullification to get drunk, and he begged her to teach him how. We then see Hinata happily reunited with Rice after so long. She marvels at how perfectly Rimuru has replicated the food from their old world and is impressed that he has created such a comfortable environment in just 2 years. Rimuru mentions that he is not finished yet, pointing out that transport and communication in this world are still slow, and there is too little entertainment. Hinata wonders how Rimuru plans to bring entertainment to a harsh world where people struggle daily for survival. Rimuru explains that his goal is to ensure monsters are no longer a threat. He reveals they are working to make Yamake and establish a new nation, aiming to bring the Western nations into their sphere of influence. Hinata is curious about his plans. Rimuru elaborates that he intends to gain recognition from human society. This process is already underway, as many nation leaders are aware of them, and merchants and adventurers are spreading rumors. They are creating safe and efficient trade routes. Currently, only those who can use magic can operate communication crystal, but they are developing a method to send transmissions using sticky thread and magisteel. They have discovered that this method allows for smooth communication, enabling the creation of networks between villages and nations. Hinata questions whether Rimuru should be sharing such confidential information, and Rimuru realizes he might have revealed too much due to the alcohol. Raphael then reactivates the poison nullification skill, making it non-adjustable for the time being, and Rimuru quickly sobers up. Hinata warns Rimuru that advancing this far could provoke attacks from the angels. Louis explains that the angels tend to target cities that have become too advanced. Luminous mentions that while she would love to exterminate those pests, doing so would reveal her identity. Rimuru responds that if the angels come for them, they will simply fight back. Hinata, expecting such a response, adds that when the time comes, they will be fighting on the same side. Luminous agrees, stating that she has no intention of watching her city be destroyed a second time. Rimuru then mentions that following these events, the Holy Empire unexpectedly announced the Dwarven Kingdom as a potential ally and formally established diplomatic relations with the Jura Tempest Federation. The scene shifts to Yuki conversing with Demrata. Demrata is incredulous that the 5 elders tried to pit him against a demon comparable to Blanc in the Empire. Yuki states that a direct assault on Rimuru would be unwise, and Demrata doubts that Cerberus could survive such an attack. Yuki admits he attempted to use Hinata to retaliate against Rimuru, but it didn't work. He suggests they lay low for now. Demrata comments that the 5 elders were all bark and no bite, adding that he would have faced Rimuru himself if Yuki hadn't contacted him. Yuki explains that he couldn't let Demrata die, as it would ruin his plans. Demrata expresses relief at staying alive. Yuki then advises Demrata to hold back for the time being, wanting to see how things unfold. Demrata agrees, stating he will return to his homeland and send Misha to replace him. Yuki consents to this plan. Demrata then wonders how they are going to wind down the slave trade he has been managing. Yuki suggests they simply shut down the orthoslave market, calling it a pain in the ass. Demrata asks if they will be releasing the rare monsters at Misha's Echidna Club. Yuki responds that anything designated as confidential should continue to be treated the same as always, as they still have a connection to the Rosso family. After this exchange, Demrata leaves, and Kazarim, who had been eavesdropping, steps forward. She questions why Yuki wants to dismantle Orthos now. Yuki explains that he wants someone to play the role of the good guy in this situation. Kazarim finds Yuki's ideas intriguing and asks if she can handle this task. Yuki agrees, and Kazarim requests to be called Kigali from now on, explaining that she won't use the name Kazarim until she has exacted her revenge against Leon. Yuki tells Kigali to get to work, signaling the start of their new plan. Afterwards, Rimuru announces that the date for Tempest's large-scale event, the Founders' Festival, has been decided. Everyone is busy preparing for it. He mentions that each of the executives will be presenting a special project, including Vesta and Gabai Ru, who are planning a presentation on the history of potions. Vesta reassures Rimuru that they will not reveal any secret information. The purpose of their presentation is to attract people interested in participating in the project. Rimuru thinks this is a fantastic opportunity and encourages them to give it their best effort. Gabai Ru then states he won't lose to Kurobai, and Rimuru remembers that Kurobai and the weaponsmiths plan to showcase their finest works at the event. Vesta mentions that there's a competition to see which event draws more visitors. Later, Rimuru reflects on how excited everyone seems about the festival. He then encounters Shin in the hallway. She tells Rimuru to look forward to her project and leaves. Rimuru hopes it's not something sinister, recalling that Veldora was planning to open a teppanyaki booth. He decides to address that later, and heads to his office, where he finds Shuna waiting for him. Shuna mentions that she would like to ask a favor and requests that Rimuru take her to Ingratia. The scene then shifts to Rimuru and Shuna in Ingratia, speaking with an otherworlder patissier named Yashida. Rimuru tells Yashida they need his exceptional skills as a chef and asks him to come to Tempest. Yashida explains that he can't leave Ingratia because he just started his cafe and needs to repay those who helped him establish it. Shuna pleads with Yashida to reconsider, and while he is captivated by her beauty, he insists that they must serve him a satisfactory dish to convince him. Rimuru encourages Shuna to give it a try. Shuna then prepares some rolled omelets and serves them to Yashida. After tasting them, Yashida is delighted and agrees to help them out as a favor. Rimuru reflects on the need to contribute something special for the festival as well. The scene then transitions to Mjolnir speaking with a noble. The noble plans to open a brothel using slaves and inquires if Mjolnir would like to invest in the venture. M. Jallmeyer asks about the compensation for the girls working there, to which the noble replies that there is no need to pay slaves. This response signals to M. Jallmeyer that the noble lacks business acumen and likely doesn't understand the costs associated with acquiring high-class slaves. M. Jallmeyer tells the noble that while the idea is good, procuring such slaves might be difficult at the moment. The noble mentions he has an elven slave in mind. M. Jallmeyer realizes it's improbable to enslave an elf with citizenship and suspects that an organized crime syndicate might have captured one from the forest. Unwilling to get entangled in this mess, M. Jallmeyer searches for an excuse to decline the offer. At that moment, Rimuru enters the room. The noble, irritated by the interruption, confronts Rimuru for disrupting his meeting. Rimuru, realizing that M. Jallmeyer might be busy, tries to leave, but the noble stops him and demands to know how Rimuru plans to compensate for his indiscretion. Rimuru apologizes, but the noble continues to berate him with rude remarks. M. Jallmeyer then tells the noble that he shouldn't be rude to the person who saved his life, and he promptly kicks the noble out of the room. He declares that he won't be doing any more business with him and warns him never to return. The noble leaves in a huff, and Rimuru asks M. Jallmeyer if it was wise to anger the noble. M. Jallmeyer explains the entire situation to Rimuru, revealing that he had wanted to sever ties with that noble for a long time. He then inquires about Rimuru's reason for visiting. Rimuru tells him he needs his help with a job. M. Jallmeyer acknowledges that while Rimuru's projects are fascinating, they require significant preparation, citing the fast food expansion project as an example. Rimuru then mentions that for the fast food project, he would like M. Jallmeyer to open a test location in his nation first. M. Jallmeyer agrees to this plan. Rimuru asks about the progress of training the chefs and staff, and M. Jallmeyer reports that they are well trained by now. Rimuru suggests opening a shop that offers burgers, fries, and drinks, which M. Jallmeyer finds appealing. M. Jallmeyer adds a few more items to the menu, and Rimuru asks if they have enough available employees at the moment. M. Jallmeyer states that they can open up 20 locations with the current staff. Rimuru then requests that M. Jallmeyer bring over 5 of his best employees. When M. Jallmeyer asks why, Rimuru explains that his friend, Veldora, wants to open a teppanyaki booth at the festival. M. Jallmeyer starts sweating bullets at the mention of Veldora and wonders if Rimuru can guarantee his employees' safety. Rimuru reassures him, and M. Jallmeyer trusts him but expresses concern that his employees might struggle to focus if they work alongside Veldora. Rimuru understands this, and M. Jallmeyer suggests that things would be fine if Veldora could assume another name for the duration of the festival. Rimuru agrees this is a good idea, and they decide to proceed with it. Rimuru then mentions that he will be giving a special bonus to the 5 employees and asks M. Jallmeyer to tell them that he will be counting on them. M. Jallmeyer wonders why he has to be the one to deal with Veldora, feeling that things have shifted to a whole other level now. Reflecting on the past, he recalls that when Rimuru saved him, his life changed, and since then, he has decided to live without regret. Rimuru then shares all the details about the festival with M. Jallmeyer, who thinks that many people will attend such a large event. Seeing it as a good opportunity for a merchant like himself, M. Jallmeyer listens as Rimuru explains that he is still uncertain about some aspects of the festival. Rimuru mentions that he wants something to serve as the main attraction of his nation and states that he plans to turn his town into a health resort. They have guest houses and lodging to welcome royalty, as well as hot springs, but they are lacking in the entertainment department. M. Jallmeyer thinks that Rimuru shouldn't need anything else, but Rimuru insists he wants something that everyone can enjoy. He suggests a fishing tournament in the mountains, a guided tour of the Jira forest, and a hunting event, with all necessary equipment available for rent. M. Jallmeyer finds these ideas interesting and believes they would be a hit with the nobles. Rimuru then asks M. Jallmeyer if he has any other ideas, emphasizing his goal of making guests want to return as repeat visitors. He wants to prepare many activities to keep his guests engaged and interested. M. Jallmeyer wonders how far ahead Rimuru is planning and mentions that theater and fighting arenas are popular forms of entertainment in Ingracia. Rimuru notes that he has heard of Hiro Masayuki, known as Lightspeed, the dominating champion of the fighting tournament. M. Jallmeyer enthusiastically shares that he is a huge fan of Masayuki and offers to tell Rimuru all about him. Although Rimuru is not particularly interested, he appreciates M. Jallmeyer's passion and ideas. Rimuru suggests turning a vacant area of the town into an opera house, which could inspire some to become playwrights and lead to new forms of entertainment. He then considers the idea of an arena and asks M. Jallmeyer to arrange a battle tournament in Tempest, noting that M. Jallmeyer seems knowledgeable about such events. M. Jallmeyer hesitates, saying he can't agree to something like this so easily. Rimuru assures him they will build the arena and only need him to handle the logistics. M. Jallmeyer agrees and promises to meet Rimuru's expectations. He reflects on Rimuru's demonic determination and realizes that assembling the necessary elements should be a simple task. He feels honored that Rimuru is relying on him and understands that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Rimuru then reveals his plan to build a coliseum capable of holding at least 50,000 people. Mjolnir is astonished, noting that this is 5 times the capacity of the coliseum in Ingracia. Rimuru explains that there will be some standing room sections available for free, while reserved seats will be offered to the wealthy at a cost. He asks Mjolnir to determine the optimal ratio of these seat types. Mjolnir understands Rimuru's strategy, recognizing that packed standing room sections will make reserved seats more desirable. Mjolnir notes that this approach differs from the Colosseum in Ingracia, which caters exclusively to the upper classes. Rimuru's goal is to maximize attendance, which would also boost the inns along the highway and promote Tempest's food and baths. The arena itself wouldn't need to be profitable, as Rimuru had planned for these secondary benefits from the start. Though Rimuru pretends he had planned it all along, he had actually improvised much of it on the fly. Mjolnir points out that they need to spread the word about the event, and Rimuru confirms that he will rely on Mjolnir for this task. Mjolnir then inquires if Rimuru would be content with the tournament running at a loss, provided it attracts people. Rimuru affirms this, emphasizing that Mjolnir is the only one he trusts with this responsibility. Rimuru further praises Mjolnir, who eventually agrees to take on the task. Mjolnir then adds that this tournament will provide a new way to utilize Rimuru's healing potion. Since the potions can heal people completely, competitors won't have to hold back. They can get injured in one match and return in perfect condition for the next one. Rimuru is taken aback by Mjolnir's insight, but pretends he had already considered it. Mjolnir, impressed, mentions that he expected no less from Rimuru. Rimuru adds that they can also showcase Tempest-made weapons and armor to adventurers, and Mjolnir suggests including a state-run betting operation. Rimuru proposes renting out the arena for adventurer training when no events are scheduled. Mjolnir likes the idea and vows to do his best to ensure the project's success. The scene then shifts to Rimuru visiting Fuse, who is surprised to see him. They sit down, and Fuse apologizes for being unable to restrain the Western Holy Church. Rimuru assures him that there was nothing he could have done, explaining that the 7 days clergy were behind the ordeal, and the church wouldn't have listened to Fuse regardless. Fuse acknowledges that the 7 days clergy are regarded as great heroes and guardians of humanity. Rimuru agrees but reassures him that everything has been resolved and the misunderstanding cleared. Relieved, Fuse feels a weight lifted off his chest, and Rimuru appreciates Fuse's concern. Rimuru then hands him an invitation to the festival, explaining that it will celebrate his coronation as a demon lord and serve as an opportunity to advertise his town to the world. Fuse is surprised by the invitation, but Rimuru clarifies that it also includes an invitation for the King of Bloom, asking Fuse to deliver it since a demon lord cannot do so personally. Fuse agrees, and as Rimuru prepares to leave, Fuse mentions that Grandmaster Yuki was worried about him and went to great lengths to negotiate with the Western Holy Church. Fuse assures Rimuru he will inform Yuki that everything worked out. Rimuru decides he should thank Yuki for his concern and invites him to the festival as well. Fuse is unsure if Yuki will attend due to his busy schedule, but Rimuru offers to provide an escort for him. He hands an invitation letter for Yuki to Fuse, asking him to deliver it. Fuse agrees, and Rimuru departs, informing Fuse that Milim will also be attending the festival, leaving Fuse in disbelief. The scene then transitions to Gazelle receiving the news about Rimuru's victory over Hinata. One of his subordinates finds this hard to believe, but the spy Gazelle sent to gather information confirms the truth. The spy also reports that Rimuru's forces defeated 100 crusaders. Consequently, Loblius is now seeking to establish diplomatic relations with Tempest, a development that surprises Gazelle. An old lady comments that Rimuru has grown even stronger than Gazelle and now poses a potential threat. Annoyed, Gazelle tells her to be quiet, asserting that his friend Rimuru would never betray him. The spy then hands Gazelle an invitation to Rimuru's upcoming festival. Gazelle, intrigued, wonders what Rimuru is planning next. The scene shifts to Rimuru walking around the town with Ranga. Ranga inquires about Rimuru's thoughts, and Rimuru reveals that he is contemplating a hit event to attract continuous visitors to their nation. He mentions discussing a battle tournament with Mjolnir, but notes that such events can only be held a few times a year. Rimuru realizes they need something that can draw people on a daily basis. As they walk, they notice Ramiris bothering a goblin outside of town. The goblin, introduced as Gabakyu, is Miad's apprentice. Ramiris is adamantly claiming a piece of land to build a house in Tempest, but Gabakyu insists she cannot do so without Rimuru's permission. Ramiris tries to manipulate the situation with a sob story, but Gabakyu remains firm, intending to consult Rimuru about the matter. Frustrated, Ramiris threatens to use force if Gabakyu doesn't comply. Just then, Rimuru arrives and asks what is happening. Ramiris panics upon seeing it, and Rimuru notices that Trainee is building a house for Ramiris. He asks Trainee for an explanation, but she responds evasively, saying it's nothing significant. With no clear answers, Rimuru turns to Beretta for an explanation. Beretta reveals that the situation began the previous day when Ramiris decided to move out of her labyrinth. Trainee, who enjoys taking care of Ramiris, agreed to help her. When Beretta questioned Ramiris about her reasons for moving and her intended destination, she didn't provide clear answers. Ramiris said that her labyrinth was boring, with the only fun activity being the creation of golems. She expressed her interest in moving to Tempest, where there were many more exciting things to do. Beretta reminded her that Rimuru had already turned down this request once. However, Trainee assured her that Rimuru was a kind person who would never refuse a request from someone as cute and lovely as Ramiris. Beretta thought that Trainee was a capable woman, but her judgment seemed to falter whenever she dealt with Ramiris. Ramiris couldn't believe Beretta had revealed everything to Rimuru. Beretta then mentioned that Ramiris had sealed the doors of her labyrinth before coming to Tempest, leaving her with nowhere to go if Rimuru rejected her again. Rimuru, understanding the situation, apologized to Gabakyu for having to handle the troublesome fairy on her own. Gabakyu replied that it was alright but mentioned that Ramiris had put some of their guards to sleep, which made Rimuru angry. Ramiris tried to play it cool, and Trainee defended her, explaining that the guards had been saying mean things to her, so she had simply put them to sleep with a spell. Rimuru summed up the situation in simple terms, amazed at the trouble Ramiris had caused in such a short time. He then noticed the house Trainee had built and, seeing the door, he got an idea. The scene then shifts to the sorceress dynasty of Thalion, where Arald informs the queen that they have received an invitation from the nation of monsters. He admits he never expected Rimuru to be recognized as a demon lord. Although he thinks it's fine to attend, he can't bring the queen with him. He recalls returning from Tempest 3 months ago, and how Omija had been upset that he went to such a fun place without her. He had claimed to be her envoy and formed a relationship with Tempest without her knowledge. Omija expressed her desire to go to Tempest herself, but Arald insisted it was too dangerous for her. She mentioned her interest in meeting a newly born demon lord, something she had never had the opportunity to do in her long life. She got angry at Arald for taking away such a good opportunity from her. Omija then asks Arald what he intends to do with the invitation, and he tries to play dumb. She then asks him if he remembers the pastries she got from Yoshida the patissier, and mentions that the quality of his pastries has drastically improved lately. She wonders if he knows why, but he has no idea. He wonders how this is related to the invitation they received from Rimuru. She explains that Irion brought one of Yoshida's pastries as a souvenir for her a while back, but it seems like she didn't give any to Arald. The daughter-loving idiot is devastated to hear this. Omija tells him that Yoshida has recently started to procure his ingredients from a certain source, which has significantly improved the quality of his pastries. The souvenir that Irion brought for her was the most delectable cake she has ever tasted, and Arald is still sad that she didn't give him any. Omija mentions that this is why she scouted Yoshida to come work in Thalion, but he turned her down no matter how much money she offered him, adamantly refusing to close down his cafe. Recently, however, he said that he would be closing it down, and she wonders if he is planning to move his shop somewhere else. She mentions that it would be a huge problem not to get to taste his pastries during this hiatus, and Arald is uncertain about the situation. Omija tells him that Irion is also fond of the sweets Yoshida makes, and if she could get easy access to them in Thalion, she might come back home more often. She states that Irion comes back frequently for the tea parties they have, and Arald is shocked to hear this. He thinks about how he instructed the 2 guards accompanying Irion to inform him whenever she comes back home, and this seemingly small problem suddenly becomes a grave issue. Omija then tells him that she has obtained some interesting intel using her authority and funds. Yoshida is actually moving to Tempest. She asks him to remember what he did in Tempest, and he recalls tasting a new kind of dessert there. Irion was surprised that Shuna was able to replicate this recipe. He realizes that the recipe must be from Yoshida, and Omija asks if his genius strategic mind is still functioning properly since he couldn't see something so simple. She states that she thought he went to Tempest to monopolize those sweets for Irion, but he replies that even he would never go to such lengths. Omija remarks that she is unsure about this, as he does tend to go crazy over his daughter. He then asks her how they should respond to the invitation. He contemplates that their destination is a nation of monsters, which means he will be exposing himself to scrutiny from those seeking to undermine him, and there's a possibility someone might use this opportunity to target the queen. Omija reassures him that he is overthinking things. She states that no matter what the younger generation might think, no one can exact revenge on her. The one they can't let their guard down against is Rimuru, and he asks her to elaborate. She explains that Rimuru easily agreed to build the highway to Thalion and requested rights to tolls and customer fees in return. She mentions that these rights are a source of massive fortune, and Irald struggles to understand the full implications. Elmesia tells him that he still has much to learn and emphasizes that long-lived races like them should make plans based on long-term profits. Irald responds that he compared the tolls of the highway Rimuru suggested versus the cost of building the highway themselves. Elmesia tells him he is naive. She explains that constructing a highway through that forest is a daunting task, and no one attempted it before because it wasn't beneficial. However, now Tempest is situated between the western nations, Borgen to the north, and Milam's territories to the south. Irald comments that this is why he thought securing profits through usage fees was better than constructing the highway themselves. Elmesia agrees that this would be the right move under normal circumstances, but they are dealing with a long-lived demon lord. She advises him to think more critically before signing a document with no time limit. She states that if they had at least contributed to the construction, it would have made negotiating the fees much easier. Irald is surprised he failed to see this far ahead. Elmesia points out that he might have considered this if he wasn't so preoccupied with doting on his daughter. She concludes that currently, Rimuru has more influence over the western nations than Hinata, Yuki, or the hero Shizue Aizawa. This means they can't afford to refuse the invitation. The scene then shifts to Rimuru having a meeting with his group from earlier. Ramiris wonders what's going to happen to them. Rimuru then asks Gabakyu if it would be possible to create an evacuation space under the arena. Gabakyu mentions that the space directly beneath the arena wouldn't be safe due to the strength of their executives, which might cause a cave-in. However, it wouldn't be an issue if they shift the underground space a bit sideways. Rimuru expresses his desire to build a door in that space, and asks Gabakyu to make it heavy. Gabakyu is puzzled by what Rimuru has in mind. Rimuru then turns to Ramiris, and explains that he wants to create an underground labyrinth with her power. They can populate the labyrinth with monsters, allowing adventurers to fight them, which would attract a considerable number of people daily. Gabakyu is astonished to hear this plan. Rimuru elaborates that the arena will be used to train rookies, and they will also set up a potion shop on the premises. With Ramiris creating a labyrinth, taverns for adventurers seeking a quick drink on their way back would become highly popular. Ramiris is thrilled that Rimuru wants her to manage the labyrinth. Rimuru adds that this will give her a place to live and some spending money. Ramiris is delighted at the prospect of having a job, thinking that no one will call her a jobless shut-in anymore. She wonders if Rimuru is serious about giving her an allowance, and he confirms it. Although he is uncertain about the labyrinth's profits, he promises to give her 20% of whatever he makes. She asks how much that might be, and he estimates that if 1,000 adventurers visit daily, her share would be around 2 gold coins. Ramiris is astonished and thrilled, thinking she'll be rich and no one will call her a deadbeat destitute demon lord anymore. Rimuru then states they need to discuss where to build the arena, considering expanding the area outside the western gate. Ramiris recalls that Rimuru had some space within the town. He explains that they are currently housing lycanthrope refugees there and can't throw them out. Gabakyu adds that development there will have to wait until Geld finishes the new Euryzanian capital. Ramiris suggests moving the refugees to her labyrinth, offering to teleport the entire area with her magic. This surprises everyone. She explains that she can transport any inanimate objects without difficulty, and Rimuru is amazed. He can't believe the previously useless fairy had such a useful skill hidden. Curious, he asks her about her other abilities. After hearing about them, he praises her, making her feel proud and acting all high and mighty. Rimuru tells her that he will be relying on her for this project. Ramiris confidently mentions that it will be smooth sailing from here on out, and Rimuru hopes that the ship isn't made out of mud. The scene then cuts to Rimuru talking to Galbaku. Rimuru mentions that he would like the arena to be completed by the Founders' Festival. Galbaku states that this will be impossible, mentioning that it might take several years to build something like this. Rimuru agrees, admitting that he also thought it would be impossible to finish in a month. However, we see that they have almost finished the entire thing. Rimuru then explains how this came to pass. We see that Sophia and Albiz offered to lend a hand in construction. Albiz mentioned that their Lord Carrion would also be participating in the festival Rimuru is organizing, and they would love to help with the preparations. Sophia told Rimuru that he has done so much for them, and they would like to repay him in any way they can. With everyone working together, they were able to make significant progress on the arena, shaping it up within just a month. Rimuru is pleased to see that they might be able to finish it by the festival. Gabakyu then goes to work, and Rimuru reflects that he thought he had already abandoned his common sense, but seeing this once again reminds him that he is in an entirely different world. At night, Gabakyu tells everyone to stop working. and head home. The lycanthropes head to their new homes under the arena. The place looks exactly the same as it does above ground. Rimuru compliments Rami Riss, saying her macecraft skill is really awesome. She helped a lot by transferring the entire refugee district here at once, making everyone really happy. They love that they don't have to worry about rain and temperature differences here. Rami Riss excitedly mentions that she can add as many floors as Rimuru wants in this labyrinth. Rimuru considers that it takes Ramiris about an hour to create each floor, and he suggests they limit the labyrinth to 100 floors. Ramiris is surprised and asks why he would need so many floors. Rimuru explains that he wants to include a variety of features and make the monsters in the labyrinth progressively stronger as adventurers descend. Ramiris then questions how he plans to introduce monsters into the labyrinth, and Rimuru whispers his plan to her. Ramiris suggests some improvements, and together they perfect the idea. This excites Ramiris, and she is eager to start working. Rimuru then visits Kuro, who shows him some prototype swords he has created. Kuro mentions that the swords have unique and powerful quirks, making them difficult for most people to wield effectively. Rimuru observes the wide collection and notices a peculiar sword. Raphael explains that it is a cursed sword capable of absorbing surrounding magicules and converting them into explosive force. Despite its tremendous power, it can easily harm its wielder. Rimuru also asks about a peculiar armor, and Raphael describes it as a cursed mail that absorbs the wielder's magic energy to create a barrier, but endlessly drains energy, posing a high risk of killing the user. Rimuru acknowledges that while each item has its quirks, they are all of high quality. Kurobe is pleased with the praise, and Rimuru recalls that when he evolved, Kurobe received the gift called Mastercraft, which elevates the quality of his creations to rare or above. Rimuru notes that it would be a waste to keep these high-quality items just because they are in the testing phase. Kurobe tells Rimuru he can use them as he wishes. Rimuru decides to place these items in treasure chests within the labyrinth. He envisions inns, equipment stores, and appraisal services for adventurers exploring the labyrinth, believing this will make Tempest famous. Excited by the potential profit, Rimuru receives the sword he requested from Kurobe. Kurobe explains that he focused on durability, ensuring the sword won't bend or break and will adjust to Rimuru's magical power. It's the best sword Kurobe can currently make. Rimuru finds the sword to be the perfect size and praises Kurobe's craftsmanship. Kurobe mentions that the sword is not yet finished and that, as requested, it has a hidden hole at the base. Rimuru can't see the hole, but Kurobe explains that the sword is special and will grow and evolve with Rimuru, eventually becoming a legend-class weapon. The hole will become visible when this happens. Though it sounds dubious, Rimuru trusts Kurobe's expertise. The scene shifts to Rimuru taking Veldora to the arena, where they meet Ramiris. The three head toward the arena, and Ramiris asks if they are executing their plan today. Rimuru confirms this and recalls how it started with a favor he asked of Veldora. Initially, Veldora, engrossed in reading manga, refused, but Rimuru captured his attention by offering him a den of his own. Rimuru explained that they were building an underground labyrinth for Ramiris, and wanted it to be a major attraction for their nation. They needed an overlord for the labyrinth, and wanted Veldora to take on this role. Excited by the idea, Veldora imagined himself as the final boss fighting adventurers. Rimuru sweetened the deal by telling Veldora he would get another bonus. He wouldn't have to restrain his aura inside the labyrinth, and could return to his dragon form without issues. Enthralled by the idea, Veldora agreed immediately. In the present, Rimuru and Ramiris acknowledge how easy it is to manipulate Veldora. Ramiris mentions that once Veldora releases his magicules inside the labyrinth, monsters will spawn quickly. Rimuru notes that the closer the monsters are to Veldora, the more powerful they will be. Ramiris remarks that Rimuru is quite sly for taking advantage of Veldora like this. Veldora then inquires about the progress of the dungeon, and Ramiris proudly mentions that she has completed 15 floors so far. Rimuru calculates that at this pace, they should reach the 100th floor within a week. Ramiris suggests they should start setting up the floors that are already done. Rimuru agrees, suggesting they begin with Veldora's room. They head to Veldora's floor, which eerily resembles the cave where Veldora was once trapped. Ramiris reassures Veldora that she can add anything they want by merely thinking about it, and they use thought communication to decide on the room's design. Rimuru projects a design using his thoughts, which Veldora approves of. Ramiris then brings the design to life, impressing Veldora. Veldora notices a small door in the room, and Rimuru explains that it leads to a human-sized room filled with manga and furnished comfortably. Delighted, Veldora explores the room and finds it to his liking. Ramiris admires the furniture and expresses a desire for similar items. Rimuru, appreciating her hard work on the labyrinth, promises to get her the furniture next time, which overjoys both Veldora and Ramiris. A week later, the 100th floor dungeon is completed. Rimuru praises Ramiris for her speedy work, and she explains that she designed the interiors to be altered freely in the form of blocks. Trainee comments that this mechanism will keep adventurers engaged while making the dungeon harder to conquer. Ramiris also mentions the inclusion of save points every 10 floors. Adventurers can resume their journey from these points if they reach them. Rimuru thinks this is a great idea, but Veldora points out that adventurers might cheat by having friends ahead in the labyrinth bring them along. Rimuru acknowledges this and plans to place powerful monsters near the save points, ensuring adventurers can't use them unless they defeat these monsters. Everyone agrees with this idea. Trainee then asks what will happen if adventurers get killed. Rimuru smirks and reveals that the labyrinth can resurrect anyone who dies inside it. He explains that Ramiris has an ability called resurrection, and those who form a servitude pact with her will become immortal within the labyrinth. If they die, they will be resurrected at the save point. Rimuru then asks Ramiris if she made the item he requested. Ramiris shows him the completed bracelet of resurrection, and Rimuru states they need to test it. Ramiris assures him that she has already tested it on Beretta. She recounts how, the previous night, Trainee killed Beretta to test the bracelet, and Beretta was successfully resurrected at the save point. Ramiris confirms that the bracelet works, adding that this was her first time making a perishable item, so she was initially worried. Veldora is surprised to learn that the bracelet can only be used once. Rimuru explains that in order to obtain an immortal body within the labyrinth, one needs Ramiris's consent. Given the large number of people expected to visit the dungeon, Ramiris won't be able to form a contract with all of them individually. Therefore, they will use a one-time consumable item, ensuring that the bracelet only resurrects them within the labyrinth. With the construction of the labyrinth completed, Rimuru announces that it's time to help Veldora release his aura. The scene shifts to everyone gathered on Veldora's floor. As Veldora releases his aura, Rimuru shields everyone from its powerful force, which is strong enough to push him against the walls. Veldora feels relieved, and Ramiris observes that his aura is spreading throughout the labyrinth, declaring the plan a success. Noticing Rimuru deep in thought, she suspects he has another scheme in mind. Rimuru explains that the high magical density in the labyrinth can transform the mind ores into magistones instantly. He plans to import a large number of ores to capitalize on this. Ramiris, impressed, acknowledges that Rimuru has thought of everything. Rimuru reassures Veldora that he no longer needs to suppress his aura, but warns him not to release it outside the labyrinth. Veldora agrees, and Rimuru turns to another matter. Addressing Beretta, Rimuru recalls that during Walpurg, she declared her intention to serve Ramiris and asks if she still feels the same way. Beretta confirms her desire to serve both Ramiris and Rimuru. However, Rimuru points out that this goes against his promise to Guy. Beretta accepts that she will face the consequences when the time comes, but Rimuru advises her to slow down. He explains that with Ramiris now living in Tempest and helping manage the labyrinth, Beretta will be indirectly helping him by assisting Ramiris. Beretta understands and agrees to shift her allegiance to Ramiris, while still remembering her debt to Rimuru. If he ever needs her help, she will be there. Rimuru then takes out Beretta's core and makes Ramiris her owner, instructing her to continue protecting Ramiris. Ramiris, delighted to finally have a servant, remarks that no one will call her a loner anymore. Trainee reminds her that she also has Trainee on her side. Rimuru suggests they resume work on the dungeon now that this matter is settled. As they continue, Rimuru reflects on the daunting task of creating a maze in a 100-floor dungeon and proposes they start by filling it with traps. Everyone suggests various cliched traps, and Ramiris confidently states that she can create all of them without issue. Noticing a closed room trap suggested by Rimuru, Ramiris questions its effectiveness. Rimuru explains the concept of oxygen and how a lack of it can be fatal. Impressed by the creativity, Ramiris acknowledges that Rimuru can be quite scary, but also reliable. She asks for more ideas, and Rimuru wonders if she can create different terrain effects for each floor, like stormy or icy environments. Ramiris, however, informs him that maintaining such effects would consume too many magicules, leading Rimuru to abandon the idea. Just then, Milim appears and suggests capturing fire and ice dragons to achieve the desired effects on respective floors. She offers to catch them for Rimuru, who is curious about her sudden appearance. Rimuru inquires about her presence, and she explains she dropped by because she thought he was up to something interesting. She feels slighted for being excluded from the fun. Veldora and Rami risk smugly telling her they're doing grown-up work, and that Malam should play elsewhere, which angers her. Rimuru then reveals that they are organizing a huge festival inspired by her letter, and Malam is thrilled to learn he isn't ignoring her. Rimuru elaborates that inviting demon lords requires more than a simple party. Rami Riss feels vexed, knowing she hasn't received an invitation yet. Rimuru explains she doesn't need an invitation because she already lives there. Malum becomes jealous upon hearing that Rami Riss is living with Rimuru, and Rami Riss acts smug in front of her. Annoyed, Malum asks Rimuru to let her live there too, but Rami Riss points out she is able to live there because she helps Rimuru, unlike someone who came uninvited. This angers Malum even more, and she chases after Rami Riss to teach her a lesson. Zun Na arrives and stops them, warning that those who bicker won't get any sweets. The two pretend to be good friends, and after enjoying the sweets, Malum asks Rimuru for a job. Rimuru doubts her subordinates would be okay with this, and asks if she even got permission from Carrion or Frey to be there. Malum suspiciously states that she does, but knows Rimuru has figured her out. She insists she won't return no matter what he does, and Rimuru doesn't mind since she will be the one to get scolded. Rimuru then asks her about the dragons she mentioned earlier and wonders if she can catch them for him. Malum is initially scared of getting scolded, but decides to capture the dragons for Rimuru. Eventually, she captures 4 dragons with wind, ice, fire, and earth attributes, and thanks to the magicules released by Veldora, monsters start spawning in the dungeon. Malum tests the traps to ensure they function well, and a few days later, Njome arrives in Tempest. He is impressed by the festival preparations and notices many visitors from outside the town. He is thrilled to see the marvelous arena, and Rigard is glad to have Njome with them. Rimuru agrees and mentions he plans to make Njome their nation's chief financial manager if the festival goes well. Njome is unsure about such a high position, but promises to give the festival his all. The scene then cuts to Njome checking out his lodgings, amazed by the posh house, thinking it better than luxury inns in Ingratia. Rimuru thanks Goberman for guarding Njome and asks if there was any trouble on the way. Njome reveals they were attacked by monsters and suspects Viscount Kazakh might be behind it. Worried about Njome's safety, Rimuru instructs Goberman to continue guarding him, and Njome is relieved. Later, Rimuru thinks about the attack and decides to strengthen the highway barrier. He hosts a meeting to discuss project progress, and Rigard informs him that representatives from the tribes in the Jura Forest have gathered to celebrate his appointment as Demon Lord. Some are there to ascertain his powers and seek his protection, but if they find him lacking, they might revolt. Rimuru understands their concerns, as he is still an upstart Demon Lord. Shuna suggests holding an audience ceremony to remedy this. She then dresses Rimuru as a king, and everyone is thrilled to see him looking so glorious. Shuna informs him that the audience ceremony will last 3 days, starting that afternoon. Gabai-Ru mentions that Hikiro and Diablo aren't back from Falmouth, disappointed to miss his glorious moment. Rimuru recalls they should be holding Yome's coronation around now, and thinks Falmouth will soon emerge as a new nation, with much to do. He resolves to give his best effort, knowing he isn't the only one facing challenges. The scene shifts to him having an audience with various races that have arrived at Tempest. Nervous to stand before so many monsters, Abaru begins the ceremony, humbly greeting Rimuru. Rimuru asks him to relax, pointing out they are part of the same federation. But Abaru insists it's not that simple. Rimuru reassures him and mentions that Gabaru is working hard under his leadership in their Department of Development, embarrassing Gabai-Ru. His father is proud, and Gabai-Ru's lackeys are glad to see he has been forgiven by his father. The rest of the ceremony proceeds smoothly. At the end of the day, Dryads Trya and Triss greet Rimuru, informing him they have something important to discuss. The scene cuts to them meeting Rami Riss, where the Dryads wait on her hand and foot, praising her as the perfect master. Rami Riss brags about this to Rimuru. He tells her that all the Treants and Dryads want to serve her. Rami Riss is unsure about taking them all in, but she agrees when Rimuru suggests moving them to her labyrinth. She excitedly plans to create a jungle section for them. But Trainee expresses concern that they should remain under Rimuru's rule as creatures of the Jura forest. Rimuru assures her it's fine since Rami Rissa's labyrinth is outside his jurisdiction, and they are delighted to have their wish granted. After completing the jungle section of the labyrinth, Rami Riss is met with cheers of delight from the Dryads. Grateful for the magnificent addition, they offer their assistance to Rimuru, who entrusts them with the labyrinth's management. The scene transitions to the second day of the audience ceremony, where two rival races, the Gozas and Misays, enter, continuing their quarrel even in Rimuru's presence. The Gozas beseech Rimuru to let them join his side, promising to annihilate the Misas and provide a formidable fighting force. Rimuru notes the Gozas include some powerful A-rank fighters, among the best in the forest of Jura. The Misays, asserting their superiority, urge Rimuru to choose them and vow to wipe out the Gozas. Observing both races resemble minotaurs, Rimuru considers their potential as floor bosses in his dungeon. He understands each side wants his favor to destroy the other, prompting him to assert his authority. Rimuru releases a powerful aura, sending the grunts of both sides into a panic. However, their leaders are too engrossed in their dispute to notice. Rigor attempts to take control, but they resist being ordered around by a bureaucrat. Suddenly, a barrier surrounding Tempest shatters, releasing a massive wave of energy, causing them to suspect Imagine infiltration. Rimuru senses the intruder's hostile intent. Both the Gozas and Misas are shocked by the power, fearing an attack by other demon lords. Rimuru swiftly departs with his forces, finding many soldiers already injured. Shin warns the infiltrators about the consequences of their actions in Demon Lord Rimuru's domain. The three intruders dismiss the warning, stating they aren't here to deal with small fry. They explain their original plan was to kill Clayman and take his place as a demon lord, but Rimuru's interference angered them. They declare they won't kill anyone, but won't go easy on anyone who tries to stop them. Rimuru, observing their honesty since their opponents remain alive, decides he can't let them continue unchecked. Shin steps in, asking to handle the situation. The intruders recognize Shin's power, having heard of her from their father. Their leader challenges her, while the other two confront Rimuru. Rimuru deduces they are brothers, sons of a demon lord, with energy levels comparable to a pre-awakened claimant. He wonders who their father might be. Shin boldly declares she'll take on all three at once, noting they don't have time to waste due to Rimuru's audience ceremony. The brothers find her arrogance amusing, asserting they won't hold back just because she's a woman. Rimuru also finds her approach reckless and considers asking Benimru to assist, but he reassures Rimuru that Shin is better at holding back than he is. Rimuru decides to let Shin handle it, but relocates the fight to the Colosseum. At the Colosseum, the brothers warn Shin this is her last chance to back down. She refuses, stating she'll prove that energy levels aren't the only deciding factor in battle. As they attack, Shin counters and defeats each brother with a single blow. Rimuru is astonished by her strength, and Benamru notes she has improved at holding back. Sensing Rimuru's concern, Shin wonders if her display wasn't enough and prepares to beat the brothers more, but Rimuru stops her. He asks the brothers if they've learned their lesson, advising them not to challenge other demon lords, who aren't as lenient as he is. The brothers acknowledge Shin's strength surpasses their father's claims, implying Rimuru's strength must be even greater. They introduce themselves as the sons of Demon Lord Degrul, the youngest, Chankra, the middle, Lyra, and the oldest, Dagra. Rimuru is surprised they reveal their identities so easily, but they explain their father sent them to train under him after causing trouble back home. Rimuru decides to take them in, hoping to gain a favor in return. He assigns them to train under Shin, who is excited to have apprentices and promises to mold them into first-rate warriors. They agree to do their best under her guidance. Rimuru returns to the audience ceremony, where the Gozas and Misas quietly swear their loyalty to him. Rimuru is bewildered, but Shuna explains they witnessed the earlier fight, changing their hearts. The rest of the ceremony proceeds smoothly. At the end, Rimuru speaks with some elves from the forest of Jura. They express heartfelt gratitude, leaving Rimuru puzzled since they have never met before. They explain the Gozes and Misas had been at war for a century, causing great suffering to the elves and forcing some to work in the Dwarven Kingdom. They had considered relocating, but struggled to find a suitable place in the forest. They came to appeal to Rimuru for help, only to find he had already addressed the problem. Learning their population is around 300, Rimuru offers them a perfect place to live, much to their joy. Their leader promises to inform everyone upon returning. Rimuru wonders if he can ask them to do some work in return, and they agree. The leader expresses hope for the safe return of their kin who haven't come back yet, prompting Rimuru to recall Enjone mentioning elven slaves. He instructs Soy to investigate Viscount Kazak in Bluemund. The scene shifts to the third day of the audience ceremony. Geld and Diablo have returned to Tempest on a break, and Diablo is pleased to see Rimuru in all his glory. Rimuru is eager to hear Diablo's report about Falmouth, but decides to wait, knowing today's audience will be the toughest yet, as he will be meeting the Tengus. The scene then cuts to Rimuru meeting the Tengus, and he is surprised to find them different from what he had imagined. He mentions that the word Tengu means heaven and dog, implying that they are a mixed blood race of angels and wolves. However, Raphael clarifies that they are not mixed blood. They are a race spawned from angels and incarnated into the bodies of wolves. Rimuru then learns that the girl in front of him is the daughter of the elder of the Tengus, and she introduces herself as Mamaji. The story then flashes back 1 month, explaining that after settling their differences with Hinata, Rimuru sent Benimaru and some others to the Kusha Mountains as envoys to seek permission for constructing a highway to Thelion. Upon arriving at the gates of the Tengu village, they encountered a barrier. The guard at the gate stopped them, asking their purpose. Benimaru informed him that they came from Tempest on behalf of the Demon Lord. The guard then allowed only Albis and Benimaru to pass further into the hidden village, which had remained undiscovered due to being in another dimension. They soon met Mamaji, and Benimaru realized that her strength was on par with, or even greater than, Carrion's. Mamaji asked if they intended to claim the land for themselves, but Benimaru clarified that they had no such intentions. He explained that they simply sought permission to pass through the Kusha Mountains and dig a tunnel. Mamaji agreed to let them pass the mountain, but did not understand what a tunnel was. Benimaru explained that they intended to dig a hole through the mountain to create a passage. Mamaji found it hard to believe that such a thing was possible. Benimaru assured her it was their plan, but they had a different route in mind and were asking for future contingencies. The other Tengus debated if it would be acceptable to dig through their sacred mountain, and Mamaji was also reluctant. She stated that she didn't mind a slime becoming a demon lord, but she didn't want them interfering with the Tengus. She mentioned that she had planned to ignore his smelly snake friend, but she couldn't tolerate anyone mocking their beautiful mountains and home. Albis was also displeased with the name calling, and both were ready to fight. Albis attempted to petrify Mamaji, but it didn't work, revealing that status ailments didn't affect her. Mamaji then attacked Albis, pushing her out of the house. Observing Albis's weak fighting techniques, Mamaji thought the 3 biscuiteers were all talk. Albis warned her not to provoke further, or she would stop holding back. Neither was willing to back down, and Benimaru, casually sipping tea, thought this had become problematic. As they were about to clash again, Benimaru stopped Mamaji, apologizing, and saying he couldn't let her kill his subordinate. Albis was surprised, wondering if Benimaru thought she would lose. Benimaru admitted she would have been sliced in half by Mamaji's attack. Mamaji didn't believe it since she had been holding back, but Benimaru pointed out that she failed to control her aura properly. They both calmed down, and the village elder, Keed, arrived. Benimaru told her she didn't need to force herself to come out. but she didn't mind. She praised Benimaru's swordplay, recognizing it as Hai's style. Benimaru was amazed she knew about it, realizing she had taught this style to her daughter. Keed explained she had studied Hai's style from her master Araki Byakuya and elaborated that she had stayed in an ogre village around 300 years ago to sharpen her sword skills. She trained with her master's grandchild, a genius in swordplay, and admitted she loved him. Sadly, she couldn't grant him a name, and her master, being human, couldn't either. Eventually, Araki grew old and died, and his grandchild became known as the Sword Ogre, a savant. Benimaru realized she was talking about Hikuro. Keed was glad to hear he finally had a name and was still alive. Benimaru was confused, wondering if Hikuro knew about this. Keed then proposed that Benimaru marry her daughter, promising to accept all his demands and even swear allegiance to Rimuru if he agreed. Momoji was uncertain since she didn't know Benimaru well. She liked his strength, but didn't want her mother to force him. She insisted on winning his love herself and left the room in embarrassment. The others discussed the matter further, and by evening, Benimaru and the others prepared to leave. Benimaru apologized for not being able to give an immediate answer and promised to think about it. Keed mentioned he could take his time and expressed her only wish was to form a favorable relationship with Demon Lord Rimuru. She revealed she didn't have much time left, and Benimaru and Albiz left. On the way out, Albiz remarked she didn't expect Keed to be ill, but Benimaru thought it wasn't an illness. He explained that she used most of her power to bring Momoji into the world and gave her a name, which depleted her magicules. Keed thought about her husband, Hikuro, hoping the young man he sent would be a reliable support for their inexperienced daughter. She had expected him to die before her, but was glad to know he was still alive, hoping he would remember their past when he saw their daughter. Returning to the present, Rimuru introduces himself to Momoji and asks if she has any problems. She assures him she doesn't and agrees to accept him as the ruler of the forest. However, she insists he not interfere with their affairs. Shin is irritated but manages to hold herself back. Rimuru is pleased to see her exercising some self-control and notices that even Momoji is feeling nervous. He agrees to her request and inquires if she recognizes the rights of the high orcs that have already settled in the mountains. Momoji has no issue with this since they do not intend to claim the blessing of the mountains and only wish to be left alone. Curious about her caution, Rimuru assures her they have no intention of starting a conflict. Momoji remains skeptical, and he asks what makes her suspect they intend to take her land. Momoji reveals it is their association with Frey that raises her concerns. Rimuru calls for a timeout to discuss this with his ministers. Through the discussion, Rimuru learns that the Frey and the Tengus may have had conflicts in the past as neighbors, with Frey possibly attempting an invasion. Rimuru cannot fathom why, but Geld explains that Frey likes high places, which might be why she covets the mountains. Rimuru doubts she would go to such lengths for a trivial reason. Momoji interrupts, explaining that Demon Lord Frey was after the sorceress dynasty of Thelion, seeking to make them her subordinates. Rimuru asks why Frey would want Thelion, and Momoji explains it is because Thelion is a high-rise city and Frey, being the Sky Queen, desires it. Rimuru is surprised that Geld was correct. Piecing things together, Rimuru explains that Thelion, the Tengus, and Frey were in a three-way standoff, while he waged war with Clayman. After the dust settled, Frey and Carrion allied with Milim, leaving the Tengus wary of confronting such a superpower. Their government must have been debating how to sustain themselves moving forward. This is when Benimaru and his group appeared. Rimuru realizes it was a mistake to send Albiz with Benimaru, as Momoji might have seen this as an attempt to pressure her. He then asks Geld about Frey's current state and learns she is content with the plans for the new capital. Rimuru hopes this will clear up Momoji's misunderstanding. Momoji is shocked to realize she had been overthinking, leading to a happy resolution. The Tengus deliver a letter from Keed to Rimuru, and Shuna reads it. Upon hearing the contents, Rimuru is unsure if the letter is for him. Momoji discovers there are 2 letters inside, one for Hikuro and one for Rimuru. She is exasperated by her mother's carelessness, thinking this is typical of her. Hikuro then arrives, informing Rimuru that he has just returned from Falmouth. He reads the letter from Keed and learns that she wants him to train Momoji as her father and a swordsman. Surprised she still cares for him, Hikuro is delighted to see his daughter. Seeing her father for the first time, Momoji is moved to tears and hugs him. Hikuro warns her that his training will not be easy. She understands, and he hopes she can overcome it and win Benimaru's heart. Benimaru has yet to decide if he will marry her, citing his responsibilities. Hikuro questions if Benimaru finds his daughter lacking, but Benimaru clarifies that is not the case. He wonders why Hikuro is acting like her father when he did not know she existed until now. Hikuro explains that now he knows, he has a responsibility toward her. Shuna realizes this is why Albi's left a message with her, indicating she plans to defeat Momoji in battle to earn the right to be Benimaru's wife. Even if she fails, she is content to be his concubine. This is too much for Benimaru, causing his soul to leave his body in exasperation. Rimuru, observing this, thinks it must be tough to be popular with women. Gobta tells Rimuru he is not in a position to say that, having similar issues himself. Gabiru reveals that Benimaru is popular with other girls as well, including his sister's subordinates, Tauka and Seika. Gobta realizes Benimaru is destined for a harem, making Rimuru a little jealous. Gabiru and Geld share the sentiment, but Saoi notes this is not good for Benimaru, as he is not adept at dealing with women and is more confused than he lets on. Geld comments that it is natural for many women to admire a manly man like Benimaru, while Gabiru feels down knowing his admirers are all men. Geld advises him to have more encounters with women, but Gabiru mentions the female goblin apothecaries at his workplace are not interested in dating a lizard. Rimuru acknowledges that species barriers are hard to overcome, but Gabiru explains those girls are always inviting the human-looking dragonettes on dates, making Rimuru think the species difference just became irrelevant. Rimuru tells Gabiru he needs to take action and notes that women are easier to attract than one might expect. He mentions his success with a female knight earlier, and the guys, including Rimuru, are eager to learn his techniques. Shuna intervenes, reminding them they need to focus on her brother first. Rimuru asks Benimaru what he wants to do, and Benimaru, still undecided, states he will only need one spouse. Excited, Momoji declares she will accept Albaz's challenge to earn the right to be his wife, which Rimuru approves. Shuna likes this idea, and Rimuru feels uneasy about where this is heading. Shin and Shuna prepare to fight as well. Unsure of what is happening, Rimuru makes a run for it. Thus, a new tradition begins in Tempest, where individuals compete with their might to win the affection of the person they love. The scene then cuts to Rimuru convening a meeting with everyone present, noting that it's been a while since they've all gathered together. He expresses his desire for them to update each other on recent events before the festival and introduces Jalmire to those who haven't met him yet. Rimuru praises Jalmire as a capable individual, suggesting that if the festival is successful, he might appoint him as Tempest's chief financial manager. Jalmire greets everyone warmly, and Rimuru hands over the rest of the meeting to him. Before Jalmire can present the festival schedule, Ramaris inquires about Milam's whereabouts. Rimuru explains that Milam returned home to avoid angering Frey by staying too long. Jalmire then outlines the plans for the festival, starting with a national launch party on the night before the opening ceremony. During the festival, merchants and adventurers will guard their guests, with free food and drinks available for everyone. A banquet will be held in the reception hall for visiting royalty and nobility, with all dishes prepared through a collaboration between Shuna and Yoshida on the first day of the festival. Rimuru is scheduled to give a speech to kick things off. A task he's reluctant about, but ultimately agrees to as everyone insists. Following the speech, Jalmire explains that the theater will perform its first play, intended to showcase Rimuru as a cultured and art-loving demon lord to other nations. Rimuru wonders what the play will be about, but everyone assures him it's a surprise. Jalmire continues, mentioning a technological exhibition featuring panels like Gabiru and Vesta's history of healing potions, and a weapon display by Kirbai and Garm. Moving on to the second day, Jalmire describes the main battles of the tournament taking place in the morning at the Colosseum, followed by free time in the afternoon for guests to explore the city, enjoy stalls, or relax in the luxurious hot springs. Rimuru asks about his role during these events, and Jalmire informs him that he will be in the VIP box at the arena, available to meet with select guests. Rimuru is pleased he'll get to enjoy the tournament. Jalmire then mentions that on the third day, they will open the dungeon. Geld commends Rimuru and the team for their work on the Colosseum, and Rimuru credits Gobta for the success. He then asks if there are any other issues. Ramiris raises her hand, and Veldora explains that the forest they installed on the 95th level has spread up to the 71st floor, preventing boss-level monsters from spawning due to the forest absorbing all the magicules. To address this, Ramiris suggests creating a new elemental colossus and asks Rimuru to gather the materials. Veldora requests that Rimuru hire monsters worthy of serving as bosses and someone to clean the forest. Rimuru is confident they can handle this, and Runga suggests the fox spirit, claiming it's adept at clearing forests. Rimuru finds the fox spirit adorable and agrees to let her handle the task. He names her Kamara, which drains a significant amount of his magicules. Raphael explains that Kamara originally had vast energy reserves, causing the high consumption of Rimuru's magicules. Kamara grows 3 additional tails, and is delighted with her new name. Shuna and Trainee propose their candidates for floor bosses, and Rimuru agrees with their choices. Jalmire concludes his report on the festival, and Rimuru asks Soy about his investigation on Viscount Kazak. Soy reports that Kazak was recently arrested and identified as a leader of Orthus, a group of violent and vicious slave merchants with military power equivalent to a small nation, and a great number of battle slaves, magical beasts, and magi. Soy adds that Orthus was recently dealt with by the Lightspeed hero Masayuki. The scene then shifts to Masayuki, planning to head to Tempest by carriage. His party members believe that even a demon lord like Rimuru is no match for their leader. Masayuki reflects on how he arrived in this world. While walking on the road one day, he was suddenly transported to another world. A girl approached him, asking for help against a brute. Despite his fear, Masayuki tried to protect her. The system recognized his heroic behavior and granted him the unique skill, Chosen One. This skill allowed him to understand the language of the new world, and the brute felt an overwhelming presence from Masayuki due to another skill, Heroic Presence, which intimidated low-ranked opponents. The thug attacked, but Masayuki instinctively dodged and countered with a critical headbutt, thanks to his skill Heroic Compensation, which ensures his attacks always land as critical hits due to his immense luck. The thug reformed after his defeat and introduced himself as Jinrai, asking to become Masayuki's follower. The townspeople, impressed by Masayuki's actions, applauded him. Jinrai and Masayuki formed a party and later encountered another Otherworlder who doubted Masayuki's reputation. After completing a quest together, the Otherworlder, Bernie the Wizard, was so impressed that he joined Masayuki's party. They continued their journey and met Jiwa the Elementalist in the kingdom of Ingratia's Colosseum. After witnessing Masayuki's heroism, Jiwa also joined the party. The system revealed that his skill, Heroic Charm, inspires those who see his heroic deeds to follow him. This is how Masayuki's party grew, leading to their current mission to visit Tempest and meet Rimuru. Masayuki recalls how Yuki once remarked on the rarity of his Chosen One skill. Yuki was amazed by Masayuki's rapid rise to fame, becoming a renowned hero within just a year. He commended Masayuki's achievements, attributing them to the Chosen One's skill. Yuki noted that the skill conveniently made people perceive Masayuki's actions as those of a hero. Yuki then assigned Masayuki and his party a crucial task, explaining the existence of the criminal organization Orthos, notorious for trading slaves, drugs, and dangerous monsters. Their main hub was in the kingdom of Balkia. Bernie was astonished that Yuki had obtained such intel. Yuki explained they rescued a runaway slave who provided the information. They dispatched a team to investigate, rating the mission as B-class. Bernie remarked that such a mission involving a nation required careful handling, beyond the scope of average adventurers. Hence, Yuki wanted Masayuki's team to draw attention while investigators probed deeper. Yuki admitted he would have declined the mission, but couldn't refuse his sponsors. Jinrai and Bernie encouraged Masayuki to accept, and Jiwa supported any decision Masayuki made. Feeling indebted to Yuki for his support since his arrival in this world, Masayuki agreed. Upon arriving in Balkia, Masayuki's Chosen One skill continued to manipulate circumstances. He met the king, who instructed Count Breber and Marquis Gozalt to ensure the hero's well-being. At a banquet, Masayuki's absence after a trip to the restroom worried his party. Lost, he stumbled upon Breber and Gozalt making a slave trade deal. Trying to explain his presence, they misinterpreted it as a heroic intervention. Gozalt stabbed Breber, blaming Masayuki and summoning guards to eliminate him. However, Masayuki's party swiftly dealt with the guards, understanding the true scenario. Jiwa revealed she had healed the supposedly dead Breber, who could now testify against Gozalt. Faced with Jinrai's ultimatum to testify or face death again, Breber chose to testify. The king arrived, and Masayuki's skill ensured the situation resolved in his favor. Gozalt's involvement with Orthos and their base in Balkia was uncovered, enraging the king, who sought Masayuki's help to dismantle Orthos. The operation was successful, eliminating the slave merchants, further cementing Masayuki's heroic reputation. However, the aftermath felt different to Masayuki. The king requested his help to return elven slaves to Jura Forest, fearing retaliation from Demon Lord Rimuru if humans were seen as mistreating elves. Masayuki agreed, thinking it a straightforward task. Yet, rumors spread, exaggerating his mission to Tempest as a quest to slay Rimuru, viewed as a last hope after Hinata's failure. Returning to the present, Masayuki heads to Tempest, intent on a peaceful mission, not a confrontation. Despite knowing Hinata's encounter with Rimuru ended in a draw, his party is eager for a potential battle. Bernie advises caution, noting Rimuru's strength, while Jiwa is confident Masayuki can handle a demon lord if necessary. Masayuki hopes Rimuru's reputed kindness towards humans will prevail. Upon learning of Masayuki's arrival, Rimuru is uncertain how to respond. His subjects are eager to confront Masayuki, but Injalmair advises against conflict with a hero so close to the festival. Rimuru agrees, deciding to speak with Masayuki first, recognizing his role in freeing the elven slaves. He instructs his subjects not to interfere, hoping for a peaceful resolution with the festival just days away. The scene shifts to a flood of visitors entering Tempest, all eagerly lining up for an audience with Rimuru. At the moment, Rimuru is meeting with the King of Bluemund and his wife. Rimuru notes that the king resembles a character straight out of a children's picture book. He thanks the king for his support regarding Falmouth, but the king dismisses the need for gratitude, stating he was merely honoring their treaty. He adds that he entrusted his nation's fate to Rimuru, not just out of goodwill, but also for mutual benefit, so no thanks are necessary. Rimuru expresses appreciation for the king's trust, and the king inquires if their treaty is still in effect. Rimuru reassures him by shaking hands, affirming it is. The king then mentions hearing from Fuse about a major project Rimuru is working on. Rimuru acknowledges this, explaining that the project involves more than just their two nations, and he plans to elaborate once all representatives from the various nations have gathered. The king, intrigued, asks for a hint. Rimuru reveals his vision of making Bluemund a central distribution hub in the future. Hearing the details, the king becomes serious, realizing the magnitude of the plan. His wife concurs, insisting they must ensure its success at all costs. The king expresses his gratitude for Rimuru's proposal before taking his leave. Next, Rimuru meets Gazelle, who complains about being exhausted from traveling by carriage, something he hasn't done in a while. He grumbles that Rimuru has caused him so much trouble that he couldn't even use his Pegasus for this official state visit. Rimuru, having heard that the highway from Bluemund was congested, sympathizes and resolves to develop trains soon to make travel more comfortable. Gazelle then brings up Rimuru's recent encounter with Hinata, noting that rumors suggest it ended in a draw, but he suspects Rimuru actually won. Rimuru is surprised at Gazelle's keen observation and wonders what he's implying. Gazelle explains that the Holy Church has approached them, formally requesting to open a channel for future negotiations, a significant shift, given that the Church previously viewed them as little more than monsters. Gazelle is certain this change is due to Rimuru. Rimuru recalls including Dworgen in his 100-year friendship treaty, which angers Gazelle since he wasn't informed. After chewing Rimuru out, Gazelle listens as Rimuru explains everything. Gazelle learns that the 7 Days clergy were responsible for the human supremacist rule, and Rimuru mentions that the Crusaders are considering purging those influenced by their ideology. Gazelle realizes Hinata will likely take control of the church now that the clergy are gone, making it unwise to reject this opportunity, deciding to enjoy the festival for now. Gazelle notes that Hinata will be attending as well, and plans to set up a meeting afterward. He informs his companions of the plan and departs. Rimuru then encounters Yam, who proudly announces he has finally become a king. Rimuru expresses hope for their continued partnership and informs Yam that the kingdom of Falmouth is no more. It has been replaced by a new nation named Fominus, with Yam as its king. Yam has taken the name Yam Fominus. Mirin introduces herself as Enger Fominus, Yam's wife, and the Queen of Fominus. Rimuru thinks she looks the part of a queen, and Yam proudly boasts about her. Mirin explains that her experience comes from Clayman, who was very particular about manners. Rimuru relates, mentioning how exhausting it was to greet all the tribes in the forest of Jura recently. Yam commiserates, noting that many nobles are now requesting audiences with him. Rimuru then learns that Grucius has become the head of the Knight Corps. Grucius confirms this, but insists he still considers himself a member of Carrion's forces, joking that he now has to babysit this moron as the two bicker playfully. Edgar, the king's attendant, steps in to calm them down, prompting Yam to tease him for being too serious. Edgar, revealed to be Edmarz's son, is simply trying to be a good attendant. Rimuru encourages him to keep up the good work, and Edgar is pleased. Rimuru then presents Yam with a gift, which Diablo hands over. Edgar is shocked to see Rimuru forgiving the remaining reparations, but Rimuru explains that with Yam now being a king, reparations are no longer needed. He mentions they've already received 1,500 stellas, and Edgar realizes that Rimuru is framing Yam as a king capable of haggling reparations from a demon lord, making him sound more impressive. Yam, though confused, trusts Rimuru's judgment and departs with his companions. With some free time, Rimuru heads to Ingratia and meets Yuki, who mentions he's heard about Rimuru's recent ordeals. Rimuru downplays it, listing the crazy events since their last meeting. Yuki is relieved that none of it was enough to bring Rimuru down, and Rimuru adds that at least he made up with Hinata, so things ended well. Yuki reveals that he has met with Hinata several times to exchange information and told her about Rimuru's character. However, Hinata is very suspicious of people and only trusts what she sees firsthand. Rimuru then invites Yuki to the festival, saying he won't pressure him if he's busy. Yuki, however, has already packed and mentions that he finished his work early to make time for the event. He adds that he has reliable staff to manage things in his absence and introduces Rimuru to Kogali, the vice master of the Free Guild. Rimuru doesn't recall seeing her before, and Kogali explains that she recently returned from exploring ancient ruins. Kogali elaborates that exploring ruins is her passion, and she had just completed mapping Soma, one of the largest ancient ruins in the West. Yuki reveals that a portion of sales from excavated items goes to Kogali, surprising Rimuru, who didn't know ruins could be profitable. Kogali clarifies that it's just a hobby, but she's managed to cover her expenses by auctioning off the artifacts. Rimuru then asks about the ownership rights of ruins, wondering if the nation in which the ruins are located holds the claim. Yuki admits that it's a complex issue, explaining that the Soma ruins are currently managed by the Free Guild due to their tricky location. The ruins lie in the Barren Lands, a desert region far west of the Western nations, near Demon Lord Degral's domain, making it difficult for anyone to claim the land. Rimuru realizes they'll need to be cautious with this situation. Noticing Rimuru's concern, Yuki inquires, and Rimuru shares that there's also a ruin at Clayman's headquarters. This revelation surprises Yuki and Kogali. Rimuru explains that Clayman exploited the ruins' findings, but expresses his disinterest in looting ruins for treasures. Instead, he's more curious about the people who once lived there, their culture, and the reasons for their city's fall, wanting to preserve their legacy. Yuki is surprised by Rimuru's romantic perspective, and Kogali finds it intriguing. She expresses her disdain for seeing ruins vandalized and asks if she could visit the ruins in Clayman's domain. Rimuru welcomes the idea, appreciating the help of an expert like her, which makes Kogali happy. Rimuru then heads to see the kids, and Yuki discovers that he plans to bring them to the festival. Yuki agrees it's a great idea since the kids have been working hard and deserve a break. When Rimuru enters the classroom, his students are thrilled to see him, but annoyed that he took so long to visit. Spotting Yuki, they challenge him to a fight to show how much they've improved. Yuki jokes that they wouldn't beat him, even after 100 years of training, and offers to fight them another day. Rimuru then invites the kids to his nation's festival, and they excitedly rush to pack. Tiz, who arrives shortly after, is a bit jealous of Rimuru's closeness with the kids, but Rimuru reassures her that she's the only one he trusts to teach them to grow as people. Touched, Tiz agrees to join them, and they all teleport to Tempest. Rimuru takes them to the inn, explaining that he still has work to do and will meet them at night. To keep them entertained, he gives them a pendant that acts as a free pass for the festival stalls, with a budget of 100 gold coins. The kids eagerly accept the challenge, and Rimuru notes that the game is a clever way of giving them an allowance.
The scene shifts to the evening before the Founder Festival, where a grand banquet is being held. Rimuru welcomes everyone warmly, expressing his hope that they will enjoy the dishes his nation has prepared. He begins the banquet with a toast and then samples some of the food. Rimuru is pleased, thinking the dishes are exactly what he expected from Shuna and Yoshida. He notices his guests are also enjoying themselves. Suddenly, Hakuro and Gel bring a large fish into the room, catching everyone by surprise. Gel tosses the fish into the air, and in an instant, Hakuro slices it into pieces, revealing that they have set up a sushi stall. Rimuru thinks the sushi looks delicious, but notices that no one is eating it. Gazelle explains that in this world, people don't have the custom of eating raw fish. Yum also hesitates, thinking that uncooked food is of lower quality. To encourage them, Rimuru tries the sushi himself, and the nobles are shocked to see him enjoying the raw fish with a smile. Hakuro, surprised by the lack of interest, jokes that he was not expecting such fine fish to last long at the party. However, no one seems interested, and he mentions that he's glad since he'll get to eat it himself after the party. Shine enjoys the sushi, and Hinata requests some without wasabi. Rimuru wonders if she's being childish, but Hinata simply states that she doesn't like the taste of wasabi. She suggests it would be nice if Rimuru had more variety, to which he jokingly replies that she's asking a lot. He adds that a true connoisseur appreciates the taste of wasabi. Hinata, indifferent to his opinion, eats her sushi without wasabi and loves it. Yuki joins them, stating that he'll have his sushi with wasabi, as he's not a kid. He enjoys it as well, expressing his happiness at being able to eat sushi even in another world. Hinata comments that the fish tastes different from freshwater fish. She recalls asking the Free Guild for a similar fish, but they turned her down, and since it couldn't be teleported with magic, she had to give up. Yuki explains that the northern seas are too dangerous due to giant sea creatures, and the southern seas are too far away to transport the fish. Hearing this, Rimuru realizes that transportation issues are a significant problem in this world, but he also sees an opportunity. He thinks that if their guests learn about the unique delicacies of Tempest, they will surely visit often. As Gazelle and the others cautiously try the sushi, Hakuro serves them some, and they are pleasantly surprised by how delicious it is. They had never imagined that a monster fish could taste so good, believing that grilling was the only way to prepare fish. Seeing them enjoy the sushi so much, the other guests at the party begin to salivate and decide to try it themselves. Suddenly, a goblin guard rushes into the hall, announcing an emergency. He informs everyone that a huge flying object has entered the town, and guards from other nations also arrive, explaining that the guardian dragon of Thelion has appeared. They reveal that Emperor Elmsha Elru herself has entered the country, causing everyone to panic, but Rimuru is unsure why it's such a big deal. Gazelle explains that this kind of reaction is expected when Emperor Elmsha leaves her borders. He elaborates that the sorceress dynasty of Thelion is a powerful nation, rivaling Dworgen in military strength. It is an independent nation not involved with the Council of the West and consists of a federation of 13 distinct kingdoms. Emperor Elmsha is revered as a descendant of divinity and possesses immense power, allowing her to declare herself the Heavenly Emperor. Hinata informs Rimuru that while Dworgen has existed for 1,000 years, Thelion is said to have existed for over 2 millennia. Gazelle adds that even he can't hold his head high against her, noting that humans with short lifespans rarely get the chance to meet her. Rimuru realizes that he only meant to invite Archduke Errold, but seems to have ended up inviting someone far more significant. Elmesha then enters the party hall with her guards, and Gazelle warns Rimuru not to let his guard down around her. Rimuru greets Elmesha, and she mentions that she is glad to be there. Her heroic aura skill attempts to interfere with Rimuru's mind, but Raphael blocks it. Elmsha explains that it's just the effect of her heroic aura leaking out. Rimuru notices that her aura is on a completely different level compared to Gazelle's and decides it's best not to get on her bad side. He invites her to enjoy the meal, and she agrees, mentioning that she is looking forward to the festival tomorrow. She then whispers in Rimuru's ear, asking if he could make time for her during the festival to discuss something in a more relaxed setting. Rimuru agrees. Afterward, Rimuru sits down with Gazelle, Yum, and the others. Gazelle tells him that he was close to being overwhelmed just now and advises Rimuru to stay sharp, or the old hag might swallow him whole. Elmesha, hearing this, gives Gazelle a stern look, causing him to sweat nervously. Rimuru realizes that he will have to be cautious of her sharp hearing as well. Gelmire then arrives, and Rimuru asks him how the preparations are going. Gelmire reports that everything is going well, and that the merchants had a good first impression of the town. He is confident that they can build strong ties with them, which pleases Rimuru. However, Gelmire also mentions that something has been troubling him. He explains that he isn't familiar with most of the traders working there and decided to look into it but found nothing. He speculates that the stress of handling such a big task might be making him paranoid. He then leaves to continue the preparations, despite Rimuru's attempt to get him to take a break. The demon lords then arrive at the party, and Rimuru goes to greet them. Meanwhile, Mirabelle is seen at the party, enjoying some sushi. Rimuru meets up with Malim, Carrion, and Frey, and Malim hopes that Rimuru has prepared a dish that can impress Mitre. Rimuru assures her that he has, and quietly asks Malim if Frey got angry at her for disappearing. Malim tells Rimuru that everything was fine, explaining that she convinced Frey she was out protecting her territory, building up her awareness as a ruler. But Rimuru knows she's just lying, and he notices that Frey has already figured out the truth. Frey thanks Rimuru for inviting them and apologizes for their late arrival. She menacingly explains that their delay was due to Malim's long absence, which left them with little time to fit her into formal attire. Rimuru hopes they'll enjoy themselves in the food, and he asks Frey if there's any ingredient she can't eat, using chicken as an example. Frey and the other harpies react angrily, and Rimuru quickly realizes that his comment sounded like he was comparing her to a bird. Frey points this out, and Rimuru hurriedly clarifies that he meant no offense. Carrion laughs and Malim jokes that even she wouldn't dare compare Frey to a bird. Rimuru sincerely apologizes, and Frey, knowing he didn't intend to insult her, admits she was just teasing him. She then acknowledges that Rimuru's presence will help Malim mature. Frey becomes genuinely angry with Carrion for laughing at her earlier, and as she vents her anger on him, Rimuru advises Malim that she should apologize, just as he did when she does something wrong. Malim agrees, promising to try not to make Frey angry in the future. As Shuna and some goblins serve the main course, Rimuru sits with the demon lords. Malim tells Shuna she's counting on her to serve something that will impress Mitre. Shuna acknowledges this and invites everyone to enjoy the meal. Mitre, however, isn't pleased with Rimuru's influence on Malim, claiming their kind has always enjoyed food in its natural form, which they consider proper. He criticizes the use of mysterious liquids on the meat, declaring it deplorable and asking them not to involve Malim in their customs. Rimuru recalls that Malim asked him to make Mitre appreciate cooked food, but he realizes it won't be as easy as he thought. Malim apologizes, admitting she didn't know Mitre could be so stubborn. She suggests moving him to another room to avoid a scene, and Hermes apologizes on Mitre's behalf. Rimuru reflects that he underestimated the situation, realizing they can't force Mitre to eat the food. Jiyune then steps in, clearly irritated, and tells Mitre to be quiet as she presents the ingredients of a soup they've prepared. She explains that this soup represents the ideal that Rimuru is striving for, although Rimuru himself is confused by her explanation. Jiyune elaborates that Malim now commands many different species, each with tremendous individual power, but together they can achieve even greater strength. She urges Mitre to try the soup, hoping he will understand. Mitre reluctantly agrees and takes a sip of the soup, surprised by its delicious flavor. Jiyune explains that this dish is called harmony, where each ingredient tones itself down to enhance the overall taste, embodying hope. Rimuru, though skeptical of the depth of Jiyune's reasoning, sees that Mitre begins to acknowledge the charm of cooked food. Rimuru thinks it's understandable since raw food can't compare to Shuna's cooking. Shuna then tells him that no cuisine is complete with just one dish, hinting at a deeper meaning. Using the dishes on the table as a metaphor, Shuna explains that just as no cuisine can thrive on a single plate, no nation can survive alone. She emphasizes that the strength of nations, like a meal, comes from broad and deep connections, and this is the world that their Lord Rimuru seeks. The guests nod in agreement, recognizing the importance of diplomatic relations. Rimuru, impressed by Shuna's insight, urges everyone to enjoy the dishes while they're hot. Everyone digs into the food, and Mitre reflects that Malim was waiting patiently for him to realize his mistake. Hermes chides Mitre to stop being a party pooper and just eat, which makes Mitre mad, but Malim calms him down, and they all enjoy the meal together. Rimuru comments to Benimaru that his sister is amazing, and Benimaru proudly agrees. The eve of the festival ends without any issues, and the next day, the Founder Festival begins. Rimuru kicks off the festival with a speech, coming off a bit awkward. He thanks everyone for coming and assures them that he has no intention of being hostile towards humans. He expresses his hope to build a nation where everyone can live together in harmony, acknowledging that some may still be wary of him, which he understands. He asks them to give him a chance, knowing that trust isn't built overnight, and urges them not to rush to conclusions. Rimuru hopes the nobles will honestly share their experiences when they return to their countries, pointing out that they've already formed friendly relations with other nations. He emphasizes that while he understands if they don't trust him, they shouldn't be biased against him just because he's a slime and a demon lord. He assures them he has no intention of waging war against those who refuse to join him, but he won't tolerate unequal treatment or attempts to eradicate his people because they are monsters. Concluding his speech, Rimuru transforms into his human form and mentions that his nation is in need of workers. He invites anyone seeking work to consider moving to his nation, guaranteeing their rights to free expression, speech, and the freedom to choose any job. He encourages them to think about his offer and informs them that the festival is just the beginning of many events planned for the future, hoping they will enjoy it to the fullest. The kids are surprised to discover that Rimuru is the king of this nation, and they mention that this was so shocked she fainted. Rimuru realizes this could be a problem and decides someone needs to watch over them. Hinata arrives and the kids ask who she is. Rimuru introduces her, saying she's strong enough to fight him to a draw. Kenya is shocked, thinking she's just an old lady, which makes Hinata angry. Rimuru warns the kids to be careful since she used to be one of Shizu's students. The kids are amazed to learn she's Hinata Sakaguchi, the captain of the Crusaders. Hinata asks Rimuru why he looks worried, so he explains the situation. She offers to babysit the kids. Rimuru hesitates, but the kids love the idea, especially the girls, who admire Hinata. Hinata then suggests the kids check out the stalls and asks Rimuru to take care of Luminous while she's gone. Rimuru is surprised to hear Luminous is coming and worries about it. Later, we see Rimuru and his guests gathered at the theater for a performance where monsters and humans play music together. The audience enjoys the beautiful music, and Rimuru reflects that this harmony is what he's aiming for. As the performance ends, Rimuru is about to clap when he notices Shuna and Sean taking the stage. He's confident in Shuna's skills, but hopes Shin isn't as bad at music as she is at cooking. As they start playing, the crowd is mesmerized by their melody. Everyone is so captivated that they don't realize when the performance ends. Luminous is the first to snap out of the trance and clap, followed by the others. After such a stunning performance, the audience feels that their origins as humans or monsters don't matter. Shuna and Sean are happy to see that Rimuru enjoyed their music. Rimuru believes that music and art can connect people across borders and are universal joys. Meanwhile, Hinata and the kids enjoy the food stalls, thinking the food is quite good. Later, Rimuru and others attend a science presentation where Vesta showcases a healing potion with 99% purity. Vesta explains that the potion is as effective as a full potion, but Rimuru notices most of the audience is dozing off. However, Vesta and Gabiru remain enthusiastic, and Vesta decides to change his approach by conducting an experiment. Gabiru asks the audience if the potion can fix a broken sword, and they doubt it, believing healing potions only work on living things. Rimuru is intrigued, wondering if the potion affects objects with a will or consciousness. He recalls Kaijin telling him that swords have a will of their own and wonders if this experiment will work. Gabiru shares that he wanted to find out if the potion works on such objects, and that's why they conducted the experiment. Vesta initially dismissed the idea as ridiculous, but admits he was wrong. He pours the potion on the sword, and it starts to mend. Vesta explains that the sword isn't fully restored, but shows signs of repair. The audience is astonished, as this challenges their understanding of healing potions. Vesta clarifies that these effects only occur on weapons and armor that have matured and been. Gazelle asks Gabiru why he wanted to test this. Gabiru explains that he doubted plants in the wild had wills, but found that healing potions worked on them. This reminded him of dryads, who start weak but evolve into powerful monsters. Vesta then discusses the nature of magicules and shows samples of a hippocote herb and regular grass. He reveals that when the magicules are removed, the structure of the herb and the grass is identical. This means hippocote herbs are just grass mutated by dense magicules, a discovery that shocks the audience. Rimuru realizes that this mutation explains why Voldora's cave was full of hippocote herbs and suspects the same is true for magic ores. Vesta admits they still don't fully understand magicules, but are committed to continuing their research. The presentation also includes a model of a train, signaling that trains will soon arrive in Tempest. Rimuru is pleased, confident that many researchers will want to come to Tempest after this. Later in the evening, Rimuru and Bedamaru meet up with Hinata and the kids. Rimuru notices the kids are full from eating too much, and thinks Hinata had the most fun since she has some soy sauce around her mouth. Embarrassed, Hinata wipes it off and tells Rimuru that Luminous has been looking for him. The scene shifts to Rimuru meeting Luminous, who mentions they already have a non-aggression treaty, but that's not enough. Luminous explains that without a deal, they won't have any real exchanges. Rimuru suggests trading goods, noting that Lobelias has high-quality wheat, but it's hard to import due to the distance. Luminous clarifies she's talking about cultural exchange, praising the earlier performance by the monsters. She mentions that some vampires are artists, well-versed in old music, but they're in a rut. She thinks interacting with others might inspire them. Rimuru likes the idea, and Luminous adds that the science presentation was also impressive. She hopes to send some of her researchers to Tempest and asks if Rimuru is okay with it. He agrees, and she offers him a special skill in return. Luminous explains that she'll teach him the secret skills of faith and favor, which allow his followers to harness some of his power. Rimuru thinks it sounds cool and accepts. Luminous grants him the skill, and Rimuru tries it out, thinking it might let his subordinates access holy magic. Luminous then mentions some disagreeable people among the dignitaries Rimuru invited, asking if he noticed them. Rimuru says he did and points out 2 of them. Luminous is pleased that he's attentive and warns him not to do anything that might harm Octogram's reputation. Rimuru understands. Later during dinner, Yuki tells Hinata she should have seen the musical performance, but Hinata has no regrets, feeling she achieved her goals for the day. Hinata enjoyed the food at the stands and mentions her interest in the research on magicules since healing potions don't work well on her. She explains that her body breaks down the magicules, making some healing magic ineffective too. Yuki mentions that magicules affect him as well, and Hinata speculates that jumping between worlds must have changed them, which is why they don't age. Yuki shifts the conversation, complimenting Rimuru on guiding his researchers well. Rimuru clarifies that they chose the theme themselves, and he only learned about it that day. Yuki and Hinata are surprised, finding it hard to believe he led his subordinates present to VFs without knowing what they would say. Rimuru admits he regretted it a bit, but wants his subordinates to be independent. Later, Rimuru has a meeting with Tempest Council and learns they're out of money. Injalmare explains that traders are demanding cash payments. Rimuru is puzzled, thinking they have plenty of assets from Clayman and 1,500 stellas from Falmouth. He believes these resources could fund over 100 festivals like this one. Injalmare clarifies that they can't convert Clayman's assets into money, and the stellar gold coins are too valuable to use for payments. Benamar realizes they lack usable gold coins, and Injalmare adds that all their gold coins are gone. Injalmare points out that while they have economic power, they lack the credit to back it up. Rimuru realizes they can't issue US either. Injalmare mentions that the big traders he knows wouldn't mind, but the unfamiliar traders he mentioned earlier are the issue. Diablo suspects someone is behind this, and Injalmare agrees. Rimuru wonders if they're trying to ruin their reputation. Injalmare explains that according to the Council of the West's rules, payment must be made with gold coins minted by the Dwarven Kingdom, making the traders' demands valid under Western law. Benamaru realizes they can't force their own rules, and Diablo agrees, warning that the traders might be conspiring, which could lead to an international issue. Rimuru wonders if the council is involved, and Injalmare suggests they're after more than just Tempest reputation. Shin is surprised they can't impose their own rules, but Rimuru explains that doing so would alienate the Western nations, which they want to avoid since they're trying to maintain good relations with humans. Shan recalls that Rimuru's goal is to create a co-prosperity sphere including most of the Western nations. She suggests that ignoring Tempest would be a bigger loss for the other nations, which impresses Diablo, who thinks Cheyenne is worthy of being the chief secretary. Shan proposes building trust with these nations since they can't ignore them, surprising Rimu with her insight. Benimaru suggests the council might be worried that Rimuru's co-prosperity sphere could threaten them, and Diablo agrees, saying they should crush these foolish people. Shan agrees, but Rimuru stops them. Benimaru insists they can't let this go unaddressed, and asks Injalmare when the payment is due. Injalmare says the traders are willing to wait until the day after the festival closes. Rimuru wonders if they could pay them in gold bars, even if it incurs a loss. Injalmare believes the merchants would accept this, but advises against it. He explains that doing so would make the merchants see Tempest as a nation willing to accept unfair deals, even at a loss. Rimuru decides not to worry too much, asserting that this is their nation, and they'll enforce their rules if necessary. He tells Injalmare to do his best without stressing. Rimuru ends the meeting and invites Injalmare to enjoy the festival. Injalmare hesitates, needing to raise money, but Rimuru advises him not to overwork himself. Injalmare agrees, and as they leave, Shuna hopes they'll celebrate in Maki. The next day, the battle tournament is about to begin, and everyone is excited. Thanks for watching.